When I got out of the hospital, I got one of those chairs, brought it around here to use at the table. I was like, I can't sit in these chairs for 3 hours.
You work tomorrow? You work tomorrow? Can you do that thing I asked you to do last week, but you had to work?
No, this suit does.
Beautiful.
We're on. Come pick me and Rainey up. Yeah. You can? Awesome. Thank you.
All right, I'd like to dispense with the Pledge of Allegiance if we could, where it's a workshop, and get right down to it. Do you have anything you want to do as an opener to?
I just want to note that I passed out a very, very rough draft of the estimated revenues for the new year. And it will probably change before we get to year end, but it is a very rough draft as of this date.
Does anybody else have anything before we get right at it? One thing I would like to say is we're going to go down through each individual budget line at a time so the department head can actually go over it and try to allow you guys any questions you may have on content and take it from there. So if you guys have other questions associated with that, we'll field those as we go along. And apologize to everybody in advance. I imagine there were plenty of questions. So that said, you're up and see where it takes us. Thank you, Ms. Neto.
Thank you.
Good evening, members of the Town Council, Town Manager, governing board members, and Lisbon citizens, Chief and Chief. My name is Diane Neto. I'm with the Library Department, and I will go over, as you requested, Chairman, the budget, and certainly answer your questions. In the 100s, under the wages.
Do you have anything that you'd like to offer overall? I mean, I don't want to take you right down, but if you anything you want to highlight associated just to set the tone for what we're going to talk about.
Just under the 100s, the only thing that will be sort of out of the ordinary for our department, we are requesting an 8-hour increase to one of the part-time positions. That would take that person from 20 hours to 28. And that's to support the extended summer reading program. And we're bringing back adult programs for the community. We're doing our first one in a couple weeks called Organizational Zen. It seems like it's going to be popular. We have about 18 people or so that are already interested to sign up. We want to focus on programs that don't hit people who aren't interested in whatever the rec is doing, or the senior citizens. Things like this. This is organizing your closets, your children, your life, and then there's things that they don't do that we'd like to do. So that position would supplement those kinds of programs, and certainly move us along as we progress in the mill system. So that's the only thing in the 100s that is different than in the past years, where it's been status quo, the same amount of people, same hours.
Okay.
And I will start here with Councilor Lunt. And just because these may answer some of the real sort of what's going on, what do you do here? It's just a 2-page real snapshot, a real quick snapshot of stats for the last 3 years of adult and children's services and what we circulate. And this gives you an idea of where the library is back in 13-14, 14-15, 15-16. So it's just something that may help you answer some of those questions you may or may not have. So pretty much that's all I have. That's a little bit out of the ordinary for us. And so you do want me to go through it line by line, Chairman?
Sure. I think just take it right at the top and see where it takes us.
All righty, sure. The 5101 is the manager's wage, and that is the 2% COLA that was calculated by the town manager's office, and that's what that is. Under the 5110 wages, That is for one 35-hour position, that's the Children's Services. There are two 30-hour positions, the cataloger and the reference ILL clerk. We have two part-time positions. There's a 20-hour position, and we have a 15-hour position. And as I just mentioned, the only thing out of the ordinary is asking for an extra 8 hours for that 20-hour person. In this, you'll also see that it's the second year that we add 3 additional hours for the 5 staff members that are hourly wages, so that we can be open. It ensures the library can be open and participate in the Mary Main Street event in December of 2017. And in this, again, I believe this will be our 3rd year, is the summer intern position. That is available to a local high school or college student to work at the library for a 7-week period at $9 an hour for a 25 work week. They work in the children's room. They help us with summer reading program. They do some of the art with us. You have to cut and paste and do those kinds to get ready for this, and that person helps us on the days that we're not doing the program. And that person makes a big difference in the summer reading program, and it also assists the students and it gives them a way to get into the workforce locally, and then it helps them on college resumes. 2 of our previous summer interns got real good jobs on their campuses because they had worked at the library. So it's all good for the community. This also does the janitor, and that person is on the payroll as we are for the 26 payroll period in 1 year. The mileage is 300. You'll note that in the previous year, we didn't use much of it. That's because we didn't travel. No one attended the New England Library Conference that was held in Vermont in November. Nobody wanted to do that. And also the same thing with the Maine Library Association Conference. That was at Sugarloaf in November, and nobody wanted to attempt that. So that mileage was not used because of that. The professional development stayed at $650. We didn't attend those classes last year for those reasons. However, what's going to happen as we progress with Mills, we'll be having to attend classes at the State Library to learn the interlibrary loan part of it, the cataloging, and I imagine some administrative things that I'll have to attend. And part of that is when you're a consortium, you do meet with the other members of your consortium and usually bring back good stuff, and it benefits the patrons. So that professional development will probably be very helpful this coming year. The dues stayed the same. That's so we can join these organizations, and we're hearing that they'll have better places for these fall conferences this year. It's much easier to get to Worcester or Boston than it is Vermont, frankly, because you can get on the highway and tool there in 1 day. And Augusta is a much better place to go for a conference than Sugarloaf in November. So that's what that is. The others are all insurance-type things that were calculated by the town manager's office, the FICA, the retirement, the workman's comp, medical insurance, unemployment insurance, were all done from the town manager's office. The cell phone is the cell phone that is given to me, my position, and that keeps me in touch with not only the town manager, but other department heads. And I get the emails that she forwards, and so it's nice when it's your day off. They don't work Fridays, we do, and sometimes Mrs. Barnes needs to be in touch with me, and she just fires off an email or text message, and it's nice to have that. And the new phones that they've installed actually forwards the calls from that phone to my cell phone, and sometimes it's just nice to reach out to the customer even after hours and just tell them, library's closed, however, I have your message, and we can help you with this tomorrow. So that's beneficial. Then we have the contracted service. That is $700. That is a new line item. It had been previously, put with the wages, and it belonged under this because we certainly contract with the young man. It provides the snow shoveling and the sanding for the entire front of the library. And that's not covered by the machine that they have, and the children's garden, and the length of the fire station, and that's what that is. It's based on, this year the young man charges us $35 per task. I'm calling it per shoveling. Most snowstorm, it's 2 by the time it's said and done, and he gives us a bill, and we get it in the warrant, and he's paid that way, so there's all the paperwork that's perfect. The next is the 5256, which is the postage and delivery. That stayed at $1,500. That is the same as last year, and what this will allow us is to reinstate the 3rd day of delivery that the state had pretty much forced us to cancel for 6 months because they weren't lending to, we were not able to lend to others because we were not part of their consortium. But now with the mills coming up in May, the citizens having the opportunity to order their own materials, we'll bring back the 3rd day so people can actually order something from their home on a Monday. We could have it here for them on a Wednesday, which is pretty cool, especially if you're studying. There are students who have work to do, and you can say, well, we can have this for you, and you can get your work done and get a good grade. So we're looking forward to that. Also, this will resume lending to other libraries with the mills, and that's nice to be able to share with others the wonderful books that we have. There's, no reason that, someone who's knitting a sweater for a new baby can't borrow our knitting book and get that to their grandbaby. Just to note that 2 of the days we pay for, and the state we qualified based on our population for the 3rd day, so, and it's based on your population, so it's still a deal when you think you don't have to buy all these books, and they go back to their rightful owners, and we have the shelf space. The next item is 5257, that's printing. That's $550. We're asking for an additional $150 from the previous year. This line continues to provide, if we have to send paperbacks and town documents to the bindery, not as much as we used to, but there are a few things that require that. It pays for the letterhead and envelopes with the library logo. It pays for the date due stickers and patron cards as well. The additional funds will support the purchase of the new 14-digit barcodes that are professionally done at this time. We used to make them in-house, and they don't stand up, and they'll certainly not stand up to the wear and tear of the new system. The 5266 is what they call rental of equipment, and that's $500. Requesting an additional $100 to support the SimQuest fees for our Konica photocopy machine. They raised their fees a couple months ago, so we're trying to keep ahead of SimQuest, frankly. The library maintains the only photocopy and fax service machines for Lisbon residents, so we're happy to have that. It's not a money maker, but to date we have made this fiscal year $268 in faxes. That means that people didn't have to go to Lewiston or Brunswick. They could get their college papers, their Social Security papers, their tax forms, whatever they needed safely to the where they were sending. And to date, from fines and copies, we have deposited $1,659. The SOAR was given to us by the town office. The telephone at 1200 was also given to us from the town office, and it supports the four new telephones that were installed. The water account, the 191, was given to us by the town manager's office as well. Repair and maintenance, $650. We are requesting an additional $200 this year for a once-yearly carpet cleaning for the first floor carpeting and the children's room carpeting, to extend the life and durability of this carpeting. This account also helps with little maintenance things of our building. It pays for professional window cleaning once a year in the spring, maintains our fire extinguishers and other little building needs. Account 5375, supplies office, $3,500. We're requesting a $200 increase for the 3 printers that we maintain. One of them is for public, and they make restitution when they pay the 25 cents per copy. It pays for office supplies and book covers and mending supplies, and the plastic jackets that we put on our books really extends the life of these books. Sometimes they come back a little up in need of a little bit of Windex, and off to the shelf it goes for another day, so they're worth having. This account also purchases all the janitor and public bathroom supplies. And please note that $100 we set aside for the supplies and refreshments for Mary Main Street event in December of 2017. Last account for the library is 5380, supplies operating, and we're requesting $39,468. It's an additional $1,568 for the following reasons. $568 from the previous year to support the anticipated increase in price of adult and children's books, DVDs and audiobooks. The additional funds would help bring a few more programs to the children during school vacations and holidays. And then some of that in this account is the expenditure side of the new revenue line that was added to the 17-18 budget for the gifts and donations that you approved a couple weeks ago. So that would balance the revenue side, where I will expend that on this side so that the accounting is accurate. But again, with fundraising, we're you're not sure until you get it what you have. So this would ensure that we could bring in the 2 programs that we're planning for summer reading program: the kickoff program, Mad Scientist, and then a puppet week, puppet show week 4, to ensure the kids have the extra, enthusiasm to stay with us the entire 6 weeks. We all know that the citizens enjoy the selection and easy access of our DVDs. We circulated more than 8,800 last year for home viewing, and that's pretty incredible for a library our size. And as your handouts show, circulation is up. People are pleased with our selection, and that's all I have.
Okay. Who has the first questions?
I'll dive in just because. Contracted services, 5215. How long, I know you said this is a new line item, so this year 1 of adding outside contractor to shovel snow?
No, it was in the wages before.
Okay, that's what I
Right.
thought, I read that there.
Correct.
How long has this been going on?
The Friends were paying for it until this previous year, and their monies, are...
Depleted for this, yeah, no, I
They
understand.
had been paying for the shoveling person, I don't know what you call them, but for years and years and years, and then they came to a place where, they just were needing to focus on extra things like new light, that we want a new light, and then the stained glass pieces. So up till last year, it was a Friends expenditure, and Mrs. Barnes and I, last year, it's a town building, and it was $650 was set aside within the wages to pay Thatcher Plord, correct?
So, there
How
might,
much have we paid for this past current storm
I
season?
believe there's about $100 left that, I always see how much that they paid. We're nowhere close to the $650. They're still,
Okay, so we've paid approximately 500 of the
I'm,
650.
a little bit maybe, $550 maybe, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I can have that for you in the morning.
No,
sir.
that's
Yep.
fine. I'm just getting an idea.
Yep.
so well, I guess I want to drive back on to the current clearing that the Public Works Department does with the machine. I know what you're
Right.
talking about, the sidewalks, that, when they run through with that doesn't meet the needs of the library. There are other areas that need to be shoveled out in order so water
Correct.
damage doesn't happen.
Correct,
Just
right.
front of the building, side of the building, I'm trying to understand where the need is.
The side,
So
the-
going down Union,
down Union, the shoveling person doesn't do down the sidewalk.
okay?
But he opens up from the street enough where someone could come in with a baby carrier and,
Okay.
you know, and then the pathway from the sidewalk to the children's door.
Oh, so right off in the backside there,
Correct.
gotcha, gotcha.
And then in the front of the building, the machine, the town's machine does the sidewalk itself, but the entryway is sort of caved in. It's open this way and the door's on the side, and that's always, he cleans that. He cleans where the handicap, you know, it dips a little bit. He cleans that, and then what the snowplow can't get off my side, the side of our building, because it would ruin the building, I guess, you know, it's about this wide. He does the whole length up to the dip, because that's the snow that historically has melted and gotten into the building,
Building, okay,
so.
thank you.
What else? Going down through the list, we have a 2% placeholder that was in there for the wages. One of the things that council actually had for discussion is we're inclined to actually reduce that to that 1.5 across the board, just to try to get to what a COLA would be. Ultimate issue here this year is trying to find a way to actually make $1.5 million budget increase actually work globally, and also refer back to the workshops in the January timeframe is to hit the priority list. You guys hit us with a very extensive list of priorities across all town departments. I've said it to a couple of folks recently. The fact is, if I have to sit through another 3.5-hour meeting, I'm hoping it's as proactive as that one, where you actually hear from the department heads everything that needs to be considered. I know one of the highlights that you referenced in yours specifically is carpeting in the next couple of years associated with that. One of the line items that you actually reference is $200 carpet cleaning to be able to prolong that. I'm very much in support of that idea, just to actually get as much life out of it, so we
Correct.
can actually balance that.
Correct.
One of the concerns that I do have, and it's just my own, I'm a little bit of an issue associated with increasing 8-hour position from a part-time position, where last year we went up 5 hours in a part-time position to 15 to 20. The creeping effect associated with that. I get that we want to try to expand programming to be able to best suit our folks, of course, across the board. But in that, one of the realities is the fact that at what cost? You know, for a line item that is up, something else actually has to give. I'm not sure we want to actually go into a point where we're actually expanding programming where we know what the baseline is where I was going with that. It's just my thought.
Can I ask, what's the total cost of that, those 8 hours for the person?
Actually, wouldn't it be 16 hours, because it's 26, over 26
No.
pay period, so wouldn't it be
It's
8
just
hours.
8 hours a week times
8 hours a
52.
week.
by 52? Yeah,
right.
exactly, so that's why it's
Right.
26,
Okay,
yeah.
sorry.
Yeah,
We
no,
covered
it's all right,
something.
we're on the same page, we're getting there.
Right.
I think that's a good
Yeah.
question, Mark, because that's one of the things I was actually trying to get to too. Is
We break that out and have, is it $2,000 or
Okay,
$3,000 or what are we talking?
What's the
about
hourly
per
wage of
person?
the person?
$967.
Thank you, because I got the,
Times 20, or.
it's
at the
416 hours at 967, so,
plus FICA.
yeah. So, if you get the calculator right there, because I was doing it old school,
And this
scratching
is-
it out.
Right here, it's about $2,000,
You got it?
unless that's,
Well, that's not that's adding in well, it'd be 2%
Oh, the
COLA in that
2%,
one,
yeah.
so I mean,
That
that's very
doesn't count
low.
in the FICA as
So
well.
I'm asking for just the extra 8 hours to the person, we need to have that broken out separately from the 2%.
967 times 8 times 52?
No,
It's 26.
just use it.
26.
Yeah,
20
just,
Thank you.
Right.
That's where I knew I went wrong, Mr. Crawford. It is 2,000.
okay.
Plus this 7.65 for the FICA, so we're talking
Well,
probably
isn't it 8 hours increase per week or per pay period?
per pay period is what.
Is it per pay period?
No.
It
Oh,
it
per
says
week,
8 hours
right.
weekly in the
So it would
read
actually
here.
be
Right.
16
416 hours.
times 967.
Which would be $4,022.
That's what I came up with as well. So it's a doubling of that number.
Right, it's per
Right.
week.
Right.
It's about $4,000 increase.
You know, and that's, I get the goal associated with that, but in that regard, just pointing out the cost associated with that goal, knowing that last year we did the same thing to expand programming as well, it's tune of 5 hours, so that was roughly the $3,000 cost, if you will, using the same math. What be the wish of the council, guys? I mean, one of the other things that I looked at too, and this is just me doing math, it's what I actually do. Last year's budgeted increase was 19,008 for the library at an 8.4%. This year it's 13,007 at a 5.3% increase. It's unfortunate, I'd like to say next year that Miss Meadows not actually a guinea pig that actually sits before us. Because this is the second year in a row that I've done it, and the fact that in that regard, rotate the options so somebody else is sitting in that seat. One of the things that you look at budgets over time, there's a creeping effect. The effect is some of it is actually static because insurance and wage increases, those kinds of, and FICAs and the workers' comp and all the other stuff have an impact associated with that. But some of the other items, when we actually talk about adding different levels of services, they don't retract. They just continually increase over time. And that's my concern associated with that sitting here. One of the other examples, and I know Ms. Neto actually mentioned good examples for it. When you look at 3 different lines, professional development, mileage, and meetings, there's been little, if none, expenditures from 2015 to 2017 to date. But we have $1,150 actually earmarked for that every year. I would actually advocate that we find the level that actually makes sense based on that time frame over the period. And I get, so as they said, Ms. Neto made a good point here, and the fact is, this year we're dealing with in-state stuff because of stuff at the state of Maine. But, again, it's $1,150 that's doesn't have any value if it doesn't get expended over that period of time. In the last 2 years, meaning 2015 and 16 specifically, when the funds actually haven't been utilized, it begs the question, why did we budget it at all? So, and last one that comes out, I get the intention associated with the operating supplies, adding the $1,000 based on the optimism that we have for getting the donations from the community to be able to offset that revenue stream, but it's a slippery slope when you're basing it on something that's actually based on charity of others to be able to offset it. I'm not sure I actually buy into that, and I would like to actually get to the point where we actually sustain at where we were last year, plus the budgeted increase of the 1.5, but that's, again, my opinion.
Well, I mean, I have to object to the way you're doing it there. It sounds a bit like you're slapping away the volunteers that donated money, and you're basically saying, no, don't do that. I mean, that's the message. I know.
No,
That's
saying
what
you
you're
can't
actually
count
doing.
on it.
Okay,
Right,
thank you for.
But I mean, Diana said you have to budget it, for the way we're budgeting this. You have to budget. So now you're saying you're creating a catch-22 where people can't donate to the town because we're not going to accept it for budgetary reasons.
I don't think, I didn't get that impression, I just got the impression that we can't build a budget on the hope. The hope, exactly,
Right,
the
well, then we
hope
should,
that we're
then
gonna get a
we shouldn't
grant.
be demanding that, you know, donations be put into the budget if we're not gonna accept them in the budget, you see what I'm saying?
I agree with you,
You know,
exactly.
We need to pull that out, that's, you know, not have that as a policy if we're not gonna find that to work for us.
Again, it's a hand we were dealt with what the Friends aren't able to provide this year. That's the reality here, and the fact that, like, the winter maintenance as well, it's a victim of what they're able to do for the needs that actually are going within the organization. You know, they have a limited number of volunteers, limited time, limited resources, just like everybody else. It's the simple economics, so it creates an accounting quandary, if you will, in regard to be able to make it workable for a budget. But that's the other part, is that if the revenue stream doesn't come in, then we're actually having an expenditure that's actually funded by the town, is the point that I'm making. So thank you, Mark, it is a good point.
Yeah, I just think if we're gonna do it that way, we should break it out and have a separate account just for that, and I just don't want people to think, you know, give money to the town to help out this program, and then the town doesn't really want it, and they're gonna say no.
No, what I would approach the fact is the funds are set aside. Anything that's actually collected goes to the intention associated with that. And the fact that cushioning the budget, I would not add it to the expenditure side. Of the fact is the funds that are collected on behalf of the library are directly usable by the library.
Right,
Agreed.
that'd probably be the better way to handle it.
Yep.
So you'd rather us take it out of the budget and and spend the donations as they come in? Have it separate from the budget?
Yeah, but specifically if we could actually have it on behalf of the library, you know, so that the intention of the donations actually go back to their operations. Knowing fully well that there's gonna come a point in time where it's not about not having the program for the community, it's just minimizing the increase to the community funding it, if you will. So,
Having not part of that budget, ultimately, it's the
Right.
end game, but still having a resource where they can get at it as needed,
yes,
as they appear.
yes. You know, and I have heartburn with adding $1,000 to the item with the expectation that it has to be fundraised to be able to make it position
Well,
neutral.
that would be my next question. If you didn't receive any donations, would you still have the program? I mean, if you're going to, it really needs to be in the budget, but if you're not, then,
Right,
I guess that's what I was driving at a little bit by saying that we can really get a gauge by having a standalone to see where the actual donations, I mean, I'm sure you have some good intel that says it lands around $1,000 annually.
Right.
But to be able to see it as a standalone and not have it included in the budget might be the
Okay.
best way to kind of get a real gauge.
okay.
And then from there, we can look at it. 'Cause it sounds to me like you're committed to the program regardless of where it lands. If that's the case, then it just gets budgeted in and we figured it accordingly. That's the way I'm looking at it anyway.
did we get a
But we're
resolution?
not gonna know.
We're not gonna know what, I think.
And
this
if
would
you
be
don't
the
have
first-
it in the budget and she doesn't get the revenues and she has it anyway, then we're not gonna have the funds to put the program on.
No, I get that part of it. I get what you're saying there, but how do we know right now, up to this point, we've never had it as a standalone, right?
It's always been a friend,
Friends of
fund-
always.
fundraiser.
Yeah.
Always funded
We've
that.
received 200 to date, and the letters went out a week and a half ago.
Okay.
Of the anticipated 1,000, we've received 200.
So if we didn't include it in here, but it was going to operate based solely on that, donations that come in at this point, then it's not something that the town's responsible for. It's basically if the money's in the account for the donations, then they operate the program.
Right, and if they don't have the donations,
And they don't,
operate it.
or they find, I
Right.
think they get creative.
No, that's fine. Yeah, if you wanna do it that way.
Well,
yeah.
it's not just me. What does everybody else think?
No, I think that works better than to have it.
No, I think
mingle it
that
into
will
the budget
work.
is very
It's just, it
confusing.
won't work if you're gonna still have it and don't have the donations.
No,
It just won't work that way.
you're absolutely right.
Right, and it's always been contingent on the donations. If the Friends hadn't come through in the past, we would have just had to not have the
Yeah.
program there.
Right.
So, you know,
Well,
it should be the same going forward.
I'll float the lead balloon in that regard, is the fact is if she's got $200 towards a program, you're committed to the program, whether the cost associated with that is at what level that program actually goes out. That's a different story.
You can set, yeah.
You have to set your parameters based on what you have within that. because I can't straight face, I raised the issue when we talked about this at the council meeting too, is the fact is having you actually fundraise on the behalf of the town to benefit our youth for this specific program. I wanna see it succeed. I don't want you to see you actually out there asking for funds and not have it go off, is my point.
So what we'll do is we'll remove it out of the budget, we'll remove it out of the revenue, and we'll do it as a standalone.
I think that's what I'm hearing.
Okay.
It's just less volatile, and it gives her more ability to know before the season's upon us what we're actually looking at for the programming.
Plus, if you're sending out letters, I'm assuming you're sending out letters, they're at least staggered over the year, so you can kind of get a gauge too of when your funds come in, and then you can stagger your program accordingly to as the revenue comes into the account. Makes sense.
So one more question too, you talked about the COLA. Do you want me to revise this down to 1.5?
I would.
Okay, I'll
I
do
would.
that. And I'll have a new report for you for the next budget.
Yeah, I did.
I have a request for
We-
Diane.
we
just-
have
I
it-
did some quick math, but that would
We
be
have them
great.
done, but I just haven't
Yes.
got them put in here.
Yes.
and I'll
I
do
was gonna
that.
request for the next time, if you do this, is it possible to break out the percentage change from 2018, 2017 to 18? Because it's very useful when we have the, the whole, list, like in previous budgets, we've always had that with the, percentage change in
I
each
do.
line
I
to
had-
line is
that
very
was-
useful.
Yeah, that's one of your reports in the back of your binder. I just did this additional report because some had requested 2016 information.
Yeah.
It looks like this, you see it?
Yes.
Does that address your
Yes,
question?
it
Mark?
does. Thank you.
And it's kind of a mishmash with the variety of different reports. One of the
I
things,
just couldn't fit it all in one. I
Yeah.
couldn't put
You're bound by the number of
2016 on
columns.
the other one, yeah. So, have you decided what you want to do with the additional 8 hours?
Hey,
No,
Can you explain
they
to us again what the 8 hours are for? For the additional 8 hours you're talking about for the part-time there?
Surely. Based on the success of expanding the summer reading program from just Tuesday afternoons to the Thursday evening, proved very successful and benefited many families in this community. With additional hours, we would add another afternoon or do 2 sessions on Tuesdays. What is happening is those children who are in the rec department program can't get out for the 1 o'clock kickoff time, and then it's done Tuesday, and sometimes they can't do the 6 o'clock. They said it would be beneficial if we could do a 4:30. Dad's out of work, he can bring him, I get out of work, I pick him up, we do a 4:30 to 5:30 or 5:45. It would take another person to do that, because then my afternoon people go home, and then it takes 3 people at least to do that and watch the children at all the stations, including that we do a station outside. So safety first, and there's always a staff person, with a group of children. And when you've got 40 or 50, safety's first, and then, we're getting work done. And then, as I said, to adult program. We used to do adult programming, and then rec did, the adult ed did a bunch, so we backed off, and they're not doing that anymore, and we've had lots of requests from seniors, from stay-at-home moms, and some men who wanted to come in and do a craft, or bring someone in who does fishing, show me how to do my gadgets to fish, that kind of stuff. And so
Well said.
we're just trying to, not be everything, but be something for more people in this community. There is a need that needs to be filled, and we'd love to be the ones to do that. And that we could do that, and with that. And with Mills, there's always going to be that moving forward with the barcoding, and that frees up Cindy to do that when she's not at desk duty as well.
Do you have volunteer staff that would be able to come in?
We struggle to get volunteers, sir. We put out on Facebook, we put signs, and people tell us I'm busy. It's not the kind of work I want to do, and, you know, you want to shelf books? No, I would really like to work behind the desk. Well, that's private, it's your information with your phone number and all that, so we're limited. In the summer, we bring in high school volunteers, yes, indeed. But throughout the year, it's tough to, one comes in and then doesn't come back, and you think, where did they go?
Right.
So, but we do that, but boy, it's tough.
If the funds weren't available for, the staff, what lines would you take from?
If the,
If you weren't able to get
Uh-huh.
these funds here, if it's not a possibility.
Right.
Which lines do you think you would most likely take from?
to fund it,
Right.
that's tough. I imagine that we could, you know, tighten our belt. You know, a little bit of office supplies, but when those cartridges go up, you gotta pay them. We could tighten our belt a little bit. I don't think we could come up, frankly, with the 4,000 from the 5375 and the 5380 combined. We could come up with some of that, we tighten our belt, you know, with you know, we are frugal with what we buy, and I seek the best discounts, but certainly, you know, we could do that, but I think we'd be hard pressed, frankly, to come up with a full 4,000. Some of it, indeed, but the 4,000 probably not, so those hours, you know, I don't know if it makes it 6 or 5 or 4 or 3 or none. Thank you, sir.
What be the wish? We've heard both sides of it. Roughly a $4,000 item, as Councilor Crafts is pointing out again. Accordingly, do we want to make a decision, or do we want to put it on a list for a future discussion with Diane, knowing that we'll come back to that topic? Crickets.
It's hard to balance. How high on the priority list is it, you know?
Well, again, what I've pointed, first woman sitting in the chair. The fact is, it's kind of an awkward position for her associated with that. If you guys don't want to actually have the decision to be able to have that point to what else has to come in at comparison, we can put it on a list and address it at the end of the budget and look at that entire list to see if that's something we want to revisit at that point in time.
I'd rather do that.
Yeah,
I think
so.
it's less costic for what we're asking of Ms. Neto for the second year in a row, is to be the first person out of the gate. You know,
Yeah, I'd like to say kind of just table that idea, the 4,000, see, you know, how we feel at the end of the budget process, if we've gotten it down to where we're comfortable with, and, you know, 4,000 is a big amount of money on, you know, a $9 million budget, but
Right.
if we're really scrimping for every little penny we can just to try to get under that mill rate we want, then maybe we have to say, you know, we'll let it go and try it next year.
right.
I do 2 questions before we table this. I know you talked about 2 different times you have the reading program right now. What would you say average attendance is in those?
Of course, Tuesday's the traditional, so that's the busiest one. You know, it dwindles, that's why we're looking to put in like a 4th week, come on back to the puppet show, and they'll say, I'll finish the program.
Right.
It starts off real strong, but weekly, when they visit with us, we average between 40 to 50 children.
Do we think by adding this position that would allow this 4:30 slot to come into play, would be the anticipation that we're going to see the same numbers there, or are we just trying to capture the folks that don't, like
Right.
the spillover that's not making it because they're at the rec?
Correct.
Okay, so
Right.
we may not, and this is just me trying to understand it.
Sure.
We're not expecting that we're going to see a 40 to 50.
I
We're
don't
probably going to live
think
in
so.
that 20 at best
Correct.
kind of space, right? Okay.
Because the evening program, it was our first attempt at this, we averaged 15 to 18.
Okay.
But that's full families, because they're all home at that point, and it makes an evening out.
Okay.
And they go home with a movie and more books, and dad's upstairs looking at National Geographic and Popular Mechanics and that kind of stuff. But it's to capture that group that we hear from, it's not fair, I can't get there, I can't partake in this, I'm missing out, my friend tells me, you know.
This is a year round?
No, summer reading,
Summer
but,
reading,
but
so-
we also do Legos that, you know, that maybe we could do, instead of twice a month, we could do 3 times a month. Bill would also like to extend the story time. We're capturing the very young ones with Wednesday morning. The ones that we're not seeing anymore are the ones that are in the preschool at Lisbon Community. However, they miss the story time, the stories, the craft, and have requested a Saturday. And so that person would be the one that would allow us to flip that forward, bring in families that have that age group that we're missing and who are missing us, the 4 to 6-year-olds. And they come with families, and the other younger children are coloring, and mom is getting her movies and
Makes sense.
photocopies, so.
One last question. Summer program goes from June or
As
this
soon as
May?
they're out this year with all
So
the
it's June.
snowstorms, it's the very next Tuesday, we're hitting the
June
ground
through
running.
August then?
Right,
Okay,
correct,
thank you.
thank you.
Can I just reiterate something? You said that the volunteers are abundant in the summer, or more abundant,
Well, we get the high schoolers and the junior high schoolers that help us with summer
Okay.
reading.
and this is a summer reading program?
Correct, what we're talking about, the 6-week program is in the summer, so. We get the word out at the schools, and the word of mouth, the kids like to come back. What happens is, most of them outgrow the summer reading, they become they think they're too old. And to keep them reading and involved, we make them our volunteers, and they man stations and go outside and do the science with the kids, and they love it, because they're the big kids now.
In that summer reading program, the statistics Ms. Neto's given us from 2013 to now is served between 100 and 125
Correct.
students every year.
Correct,
You said it was a 6-week program from June through early August?
yes,
So late start in June then, okay.
right,
That's fine.
right.
Ms. Barnes was just picking up on one of the other observations on this. If there's a water increase in the sewer rate increase that we talked about with the fee structure, to be able to deal with the infrastructure down that we've talked about there, neither of those are reflected in this number. She will have to bring those later. You know, it's the first out of the gate. We talking the same thing when we talk to fire. Those will have to be incorporated at the end. Last question I think I have, Ms. Neto. You mentioned third day for reinstatement and delivery in the postage and delivery account.
Mhm.
Did that not get reinstated last year, or did it, what happened?
It's there, we just not we're not allowed to use it because we're not mailing out to other libraries. So we put it on hiatus, I guess, for lack of better, not knowing what the state was gonna do with us.
Okay,
And that was one of the decisions that we made to move to Mills.
to allow for that
Correct.
third day. Okay, that's what I
People
meant.
miss it, but there was no sense in paying that,
Right,
frankly, because the books weren't coming on the third day. The guy would come, he said, boy, I like your location, the bucket has 1 book. So we cut it till we made the decision to switch to Mills, so that we wouldn't spend, the money.
to hear, where I think I'm hearing it then is that you were a year more proactive than the state was in addressing you. Because you budgeted for it last year, they
Right.
just did not pick you up, is what I was sort of pointing
They
out.
dropped us, and so I thought,
Right.
well, I'm
Yeah.
not gonna
Okay.
do this, because I'm not gonna waste the money. So we have 2 days, as it stands. We'll bring back the third day as soon as Mill goes live. May 15th is our target date. And we'll bring back the third day.
Perfect. Anything else from Ms. Neto, guys? I guess to recap for the listening public, we went to 1.5. We're gonna talk about the $4,000 increase at a later date. And we talked about the supplies, the operating account, reducing that for 1,000, having it specifically set aside, not flowing through the budget.
I think that also offers some assurance, people who do give money to the town, they know it's gonna be
Yeah.
a separate account, not just gonna go into the general fund and hope it ends up in the right place, or, if I give money, it won't matter because the town's already gonna pay for it anyway, so I think it helps to break it out into a separate account like that.
And what I'm liking hearing in that regard is, other than the 8-hour position, we still have the ability to address that additional summer reading program. The way that it's handled this year is already there. There's slack in this year's budget to be able to cover it, and we're not looking at a hardship by stripping too much next year to make that a non-reality either. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Who's next?
Oh, less than an hour, that's great. Less than an hour, I'll be out of here, right?
Nice.
Chief had me all nervous.
The longest budget Diane's ever done. Good job.
Now, who took the short of that, her or him? Because that could have gone either way for the listening public. Okay. I got you. You have the floor, sir.
All right, good evening. Good to be here. So, first time through for this, so I guess I'll follow Diane's lead and just slowly go through one budget at a time, and then we'll go back to the questions. If that's what you folks want to do.
That'd be great.
Unless there's anything you want to hit in an overview, just to keep us thinking in terms of global.
No, I think we'll.
Okay,
I
okay,
think you'll have
that's-
questions
it's-
along the way, so I'm fine just moving along. So, we'll start with the wages. And I've included in there a full-time lieutenant's position back into the budget. And then moving on to overtime, current projection is at 23,246 on our overtime. And, so we're going over. We're going over, right now what we have, so that's why I bumped that up a little bit. One of the issues with running bare bones is whenever anybody's out, we're replacing them at overtime. And we have an officer that left recently and an officer that's in the academy. So we've been expending our overtime budget fairly regularly here. So temporary are our reserve officers. We budget 32 hours per week for our reserve officers. That's 4 8-hour shifts. We have reserve officers in to supplement our regular staffing on Friday evenings, Saturday day shift, Saturday evenings, and then Sunday day shift. And right now, we have really only 4 reserves that are working on a regular basis for us. Vacation, sick replacement is up. We'd roughly, in January when I was doing this budget, we'd used already 65% of the funding by mid-January. And training, just so you're aware, I've put a 20% jump in training and professional development in the budget. So that's in there. That's, if you see the little bump there, that's what that is. The on-call, non-union, just in case anybody's wondering about that, we have 3 sergeants. 2 patrol sergeants are on call every other week. So that this line item covers that. And then we also have a CID sergeant, or detective sergeant, and a detective, and they're also on call every other week. So that's what that covers. Actually, I correct myself here. The patrol sergeants are on call every other weekend, not a full week. But the people in CID are on every other week. Professional development, like I told you, I've put a 20% bump budget increase in that, and also I've budgeted for 2 positions at the Maine Criminal Justice Academy in the upcoming budget year. So each position is $2,500. So that's what the bump is there. Nobody has asked, nobody within the time limit there. By March 1st, they're supposed to advise me if they want to have any professional development, any training, not training, but any college education, if they plan on taking any college courses. by March 1st. Nobody has advised me that they want to, so that's why that has remained at 0. The school detail, in the past, that was called the school detail line item, and what we're gonna do from this point forward is have it for not just school, but also for any other traffic safety details that we're doing due to construction, usually road construction, paving, and so forth. So that's the only change there. The next few items were provided by the town manager's office. Uniform cleaning, just so you're aware, there was a significant jump in uniform cleaning. And the reason for that was this line has never been budgeted at full coverage. Per union contract, the town is supposed to cover 2.5 sets of uniforms per week. And it's roughly $7 for one uniform per week. So if you take, $7 per week times 7 officers, you're up around $2,500. I've bumped it up to $1,000. We have an agreement with a company in Brunswick for dry cleaning, and right now, to be honest with you, the officers apparently don't want to drive to Brunswick. There's only a couple officers that are using it, so that's the only reason. We had $100 in there this year, and that has already been spent, so I bumped it up to $1,000. Physical fitness, again, this is another line item that has never been fully budgeted for. If everybody wanted to use per contract, the town covers physical fitness, a gym, basically for everybody, and it's $250 per person if our officers want to use the gym. So if we provided that at full coverage, it'd be $3,750 for our officers. So I've bumped that up to $2,500. Recruitment, just so you're aware, is a line that we would use for professional services if we're hiring somebody. We have polygraphs for any officer that we would be hiring, or for that matter, a communications officer or patrol officer. So those are $250 per person. Psychological tests are $525 per person. So I budgeted for 3 polygraphs, 3 psychological exams. So that's what recruitment's covering. And going down through the highlights, basically, I'll stop at gas and our gas consumption. As you're aware, when I first started in September, I lifted the mileage restriction we had for the officers, which was roughly 60 miles a shift. And when I was making the budget, I looked at our consumption from September 1st to January 1st, so roughly the first quarter of the year that I'd been here, we were up 25% in our fuel usage. So that's what I used to come up with this number. Repair and maintenance of equipment is pretty basic along those lines. We still have some equipment that needs to be worked on as we get towards spring here, including our radar trailer. We've got a couple issues with some of our cameras that are in the cruisers and some external cameras around the building. So we haven't used much out of that account up to date, but we're about to. Equipment repair for the office. It looks like last year we budgeted $600. I'm bumping that up to $1,000 this year. We need some new chairs, and in the past, to be honest with you, what has happened is we've gone cheap on the chairs and purchased them at BJ's or some other wholesaler. Our people are sitting in these chairs a lot. In communications, it's 24/7. You can't, the money you save initially on items such as chairs like that, we've wasted in numerous chairs. So the chair that we just purchased one chair, we still need another, and they're almost $400, but it's a heavy-duty, lifetime warranty type chair. So sometimes you have to pay for what you're looking for your people. Repair and maintenance of vehicles. Pretty basic, all the vehicles when possible. We have Public Works do the maintenance on them. It's not always possible. They've had some staffing issues, and when they don't have the staffing for it, we go to other local contractors. Supplies, there's basically a 5% increase in supplies for the office and for And for supplies for the officers, the operational supplies, this is where our K-9 bills come out of, firearms, ammunition, investigative supplies that we have. And one thing that we're gonna be trying to purchase for everybody this year is emergency tourniquets and quick clot, which is something so if an officer gets injured out on the road, quick clot obviously is exactly what it sounds like. It'll clot any wound that they have. The town has purchased this in the past for the officers, but it's all expired, so we need to get some more. Tires, we're about to purchase summer tires, which is virtually gonna wipe out our budget. It's gonna leave us just a little wiggle room for the occasional tire that get when you strike road debris or a curb or something. So we'll have enough for another tire after that. Equipment, the equipment budget, the equipment line covers handguns, shelving, tasers, any type of equipment that we need in our investigative division. Motor vehicle pretty much speaks for itself, and capital improvements, the 33,500 was what I had spoken about a few months ago to the board here as far as radio transmission, and what we're trying to do to fix that issue. And that pretty much covers the initial part on the police department. Want me to keep going, or are we gonna do one at a time?
One at a time. Who wants to jump in?
I have a couple questions. On the 5112, it says you came in almost $10,000 under budget. Is that correct? That you're projecting?
Yeah, currently our current projection equals, roughly $15,000. And I'm sorry, I'm just trying to line up my paperwork here, and we had budgeted, yes, 24,000. If you're, well, I guess I'll wait for your question unless if it's gonna be why are we so low, we're having trouble, getting reserve officers to work.
Well, actually, my question was gonna be, why isn't the budget lower? Because there's only a $2,000 decrease from last year.
Trying to get more reserves to start supplementing it. We've been running short because we're having issues finding reserves that want to work. In fact, two of the reserves, I think I mentioned this earlier, we're now going to call them auxiliary reserves. They just, for issues in their personal life, they're not working that often. We still need them for events such as Moxie Days and so forth. But I have an issue if we're not going to be using them that often. They don't have the time. And this is one of those situations where if you're not working, doing law enforcement all the time, it's tough to bring somebody in every 3 months or every 4 months and expect them to, provide quality service. So there's a couple of reserves that we're gonna drop back to what we call auxiliary. We'll use them during Moxie Days, parades, something like that, where it's a controlled event where we can control them a little better. So I wanna look and find a couple more reserves and bring them on. We've been running short. Need to bump that back up.
I've heard that's a statewide problem with trying to get reserve officers in general. It's hard to get people that are qualified and willing to do it.
Well, it's like the library.
Yes,
Everybody
nobody has time, everybody's so busy with
Nobody has
everything.
time.
Yes, yeah. I mean, most of the reserve officers now are officers working in another department somewhere else. And,
Yep.
they come over here and they have spare time working a weekend, want some extra hours or something. But,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly.
On 5150, it says it provides reimbursement for employees to meet physical fitness requirements per union contract, and then the line after that is physical fitness.
5150 is for physicals.
Yes.
That's what it says, but that's not what the description is.
Yep, you're right. I spent a little too much time that day in front of the computer.
Okay,
So-
okay, no problem.
I have a question about 5152. You say that there's a union contract that requires this section of it?
Yes.
Why are we budgeting when we have MTM free to give all of the town employees?
It's part of the union contract that they can have up to $250 to use.
So I don't see why we would.
Yeah, we have a fitness center
I mean,
here
yeah,
available to
exactly.
all town employees for free.
In the union world,
That's where I was going next.
It's the fact that you're contractually obligated, that there's nothing that actually requires them to actually have to go to MTM.
Right, and we could negotiate that in the union
It's-
contract, that we have a
Exactly.
facility
The
there,
next-
give that,
The next contract, correct.
give them the free membership at MTM for
Convenience
the year
that's
instead of
happening now,
that. How many officers currently use that, do you know?
There's only, I think it's 3 or 4 officers that use it. Well, I could probably figure it out here for you.
Based on the expenditure, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's only a few officers.
Also, is it required by the union that we have to clean everybody's uniforms?
I believe so.
That's in the union contract?
Yes, sir. If they so choose to.
Right.
Obviously,
Did they get a
Many-
stipend or they get reimbursed?
they get reimbursed, but that's the piece that we only had $100, and nobody has actually, hopefully they're not watching TV tonight or don't watch this, but nobody's been using it, other than a couple of officers.
All right, that's all I got for right now. I appreciate it, thank you.
Anybody else?
On 5410, there's an increase of 8% for equipment, what's the specifics of that? I think it's just a couple $100 difference, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, I added 5%, and maybe my math was off, you said 8%, but it's the price of all the equipment that we purchase is going up, so I'm trying to plan ahead.
Is it purchasing the vehicle or is it?
Purchasing the new
Yeah,
vehicle,
just looking at
purchasing the
it, talk
equipment for it, lettering it, getting it all done.
Make notes.
On that subject, you guys will pardon me for a left-hand turn.
We're used to it.
I know you are. I appreciate everybody that way. One of the things that we talked about to get to this point, which is why you're seeing it here, is to make the jump of actually financing it in his budget versus actually leasing it over a 3-year period of time. My heartburn on the topic is what we had talked about with 1 vehicle a year is not sustainable for what he needs with a fleet of 8. Am I off on that?
You are not. Roughly 2 hours ago, I saw this chart for the first time in my career. So it didn't take long to look at it to realize this isn't going to work. I think initially when we first spoke a few months ago or a couple months ago, I talked about trying 1-2, 1-2, which is what Chief Brooks said.
Right.
And definitely 1 a year is not going to be functional.
Even if I'll draw from Lewis and he can draw from Brunswick, I'm sure, but what he will tell you is the fact is the average life of a cruiser is less than 5 years. That's best case scenario.
Yes, sir. And you
That's-
really don't want a cruiser on the road
After
over
the 4.
100,000 miles, and if you folks aren't aware, I could tell you the mileage on our cruisers, other than the brand new one, we have one at 59, oh, actually, I'm sorry, that's not a road cruiser. We have one Explorer at 59,000, we have one at 93, one at 64, and one at 76. So
We should be
are
eyeballing,
gonna
yeah.
be in a bad way soon.
So did we not buy anything last year, or was it just a separate line for leasing it?
You'll see it in the back of the book in that regard. It was covered through the debt service portion.
I thought, the year before though, I don't think we bought one.
Right.
The year that we had to make the big cuts in the budget.
Yeah,
yeah.
we
You-
did
we
not,
didn't get
we
one.
did not. I remember that.
That's kind of what put us in the short-term issue associated with the mileage of what he's looking at right now. And that's kind of where I was going with it, is the model that we're looking at this year, guys, is it's even if it were to make sense, buying one a year to be able to meet the needs associated with that, we still have to pay off 2 years worth of leases on the ones that's out there that we bought this past year, and 1 more year this last year for the ones that went out 2 years prior to that. So those are something that's also within this model. It's not within the chief's department, but it's something that's actually, if there's traction to be had to save the financing over that life of that vehicle, I think this is the best way to be able to approach it. It's just the 1-a-year model is not going to work within the needs of what he has for operations. I mean, because he knows it as well as we do, is the fact that the one that's coming in will be the one that goes probably front line, and then you'd trade down to a lesser use to be able to prolong the life of the asset, but there's still a greater cost than the $35,000 a year. That fair answer?
That is a fair answer. I will tell you all that we are trying to mitigate this as much as possible. We're coming up with a new plan that we're gonna institute in the next 2 months here, where we're gonna have 2 officers who will be assigned to one car. Generally speaking, if you have an officer in the same vehicle over time, they tend to take better care of it. And so we're gonna put 2 day shift officers in one car, 2 night shift officers in a different car. They work opposites, so it basically, we think that cars, not that anybody's not taking care of their vehicles, but we think the cars will last better, and it's gonna lessen the mileage a little bit, so we're gonna try that.
So, in your opinion, for this year, the one purchase with a $35,000 line item will meet the needs for the coming budget?
It will meet the needs for the budget. I caution that
No.
the mileage is getting.
When I say
up there.
budget, your department, that's a different answer. I want to hear your answer. I don't want to hear my answer.
Oh, okay. Well, my answer would be I'd prefer 2. I'd rather start the 2-1-2-1 this year with the two vehicles.
Understanding that it would be replacing the one with 93 and 76, and then getting us off in the footing so that next year when we come back around, we're looking at, there were 2 others, 59 and then 63, I think it was, or somewhere in that ballpark.
64 and 59.
Okay, so that we would still be in a good place. If we had to pick one, it's probably gonna be the 69, which would probably be living closer to that 90 by then.
Yes.
So at least we're in a spot where we only have one higher mileage vehicle at that point, and then we're rotating back around. We wouldn't have to necessarily go for 2 on that year 3. We could go for a 1 and still be, in theory, try to be out of the
In
game.
theory, with what we're planning to try to keep the mileage down a little.
Right.
And I caution this, too much talk about the mileage, because then the question's gonna come up, well, you just gave everybody free will to drive around. And my answer to that, if it comes up, is, there is a cost to service, and I don't want us
You're
to be
seeing
just
them
a
in
one
areas of the town that you weren't seeing them in before.
I don't, I mean, I can't speak for you guys, but I know that for me, I think the idea that you pulled the mileage cap, that to me made a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, I
And
think
so
that's great too.
that's a trade-off that I know personally I'm A-okay with, because like you said, there's presence in places in this community that really had been kind of quiet, and I think we weren't the only ones that picked up on that. Maybe some folks who don't want to do nice things all the time picked up on that as well. So the fact that we're raising presence throughout the community, that's a no-brainer. I mean,
People that wanna go boating.
Yeah.
We have him, by the way. He's next door.
Good.
Oh, you got him next door. I got a bunch of questions. I just didn't want to stomp all over everybody else. Just a couple.
On the vehicle, do we want to make a decision on that tonight on the 2 versus 1? Or do we want to actually have that as a later discussion for Diane's
I'm a
presentation?
big fan of
Yeah.
wraparound. The wraparound on that might be good.
Let's put that on there, because
Because
that could be a
there's gonna
potential
be some
30.
other things that need to get,
Yeah, that's the
finagled.
$35,000 cost
right,
that's not seen here right now.
right.
Yep.
That's why I just don't want to lose sight of that.
I'd like to know what are the costs that we incur by leasing it versus buying it outright, so what is the total cost additionally from the, finance charges and, interest payments and stuff for comparison.
I think the last vehicle, it was like $4,000 mark
Yeah.
over the life of that lease, or for some foolish figure. I could be twice that, but
Yeah, I'd just like to have that information, so. it'd be-
Lydia had it for the last one I saw it. I
Okay.
just don't remember the specifics, but
Yeah.
there is a savings.
No, I'd just like to see it for a later meeting. I don't need
Absolutely.
it right now. I know you can't pull it out of your head.
Okay, I'm gonna dive in on this. I know you talked a little bit about professional development in the overview, in the flyby. 5121
Yes, sir.
is, so, like, I guess it was for 16-17, it was budgeted at 6,500. For the upcoming budget, it would be at 12,800, so, and I know you said holding police academy, was it spots or trainings, 2 of them? Did I hear you right on that?
Yes, sir. I've put in for 2 slots. The academy only runs twice a year.
Okay.
Once in August and once in January. So basically, to reserve a slot, first day of the academy, in this particular case in January, I had to request a slot for the August academy. So you gotta do it preemptively, or you won't get a slot, and your officers go over a year,
Right.
which they're not allowed to do.
Nope, okay.
So it's $2,500 unless the academy goes up, and it's $2,500 per an officer, so that's in there.
All right, perfect. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure I heard that right when we were doing the flyby there. Also, if we look at 5140, uniforms and safety, from 11.6 up to 17.650.
Yep, so what I have in there is if we're gonna send 2 new officers to the academy, we have to outfit 2 new officers. It is not cheap to buy all the gear that officers need. It's roughly $3,500 per officer to get all of the gear that they need. So I've got 2 officers, that's 7,000 right there. I put in for 2 reserves, I figure roughly, we generally, for a reserve officer, we'll buy some of their gear. We buy at least 1 long sleeve, 1 short sleeve, 2 pairs of pants. So I have $400 per reserve, so there's an extra $800 right there, just planning ahead for reserve officers.
Perfect, thank you. Let me see here. 5257, printing. I looked at the 2,800 for the the current budget, 16-17 budget, and so it was a 2,200 add to the 55. I'm just kind of trying to understand, wrap my head around what that drove that increase.
That would be for, I am hoping to do a new set of police trading cards this year.
Okay.
We haven't done a set since 2003. It's a very popular community policing item. There's no, not really any grants out right now for anything along those lines, so I put in there to do a new set of cop cards.
Thank you. And, let's see. 5395, the tires. I was just curious why that didn't fall under 5365, which would have been repair and maintenance of vehicles. Why is tires as a standalone, as a breakout? Is that just a way it was set up when you saw the budget broken out from previous years?
Yeah, I'll give you the answer I keep getting. That's the way it's always been. So
Okay,
it's
well, that's
always
good.
been here.
I just wanted to understand that a little bit better, why they weren't all under one umbrella first off.
In public safety, sometimes they do it because it's viewed more as a commodity, because it is a pretty sizable line item when you get to departments like police.
I can understand why I want to get it broken out. It's going to make you ask some questions if it's plugged into an overall budget, but
Right.
I just wanted to hear the chief say that. That's
Good.
all. All right, 5410, equipment 2,700, and I heard you say in your overview, handguns, shelving, tasers, because I was wondering what that was for. It's kind of,
Larger items,
Yep.
more expensive items, that's what it's for.
And then the capital improvement for 33.5, I know you talked about that with some of the issues with the radios that we're having. So that's for communications equipment only, correct? I think I used up all my questions. I'm good, thank you, Chief.
The 33.5, to go back to that item, 5470. One of Diane's recommendations for the use of the amount over in fund balance is that item. We can either agree with her, so the fact that this would come out of here and actually be paid for out of the fund balance
Right.
piece to reduce the budget, or we put it on the list for the future discussions associated with that.
I think
From
there is,
from the last meeting, is that what you're talking
Yeah,
about?
this was that one-time expense that we talked about, those things we were gonna cover as a one-time expense, not budgeted out.
right.
What is that?
And to recap associated with that, the chief, when he went through his list of items back in the January timeframe, he talked about the radio equipment to the tune of the 33.5, 2 cruisers that we already addressed,
Right.
the lieutenant's position, and then there was some discussion associated with the SRO in confirming where we're at right now, with the fact is staying at 1 for the best benefit to the community, to the position, whether it be community or not. It's good for the school, but doesn't help him put officers on patrol. So the 33.5, do we wanna have that discussion as a recap item as well too, whether that be come from fund balance or not? Why don't you put that one down?
Yeah. I mean, hey, we'll start one right now.
What, the fund balance?
33.5, yeah, amount of fund balance right now. I mean,
I'm in support of it.
Yeah,
I am too.
I like how you did it as well with this.
And what I tried to do was get those one-time items that you're typically not gonna see back in a budget, or you're not gonna have to fund later on. That's why I didn't put the cruisers there, because
Well, no,
that's
I
a
remember us having that
reoccurring-
specific discussion because the cruise is gonna be a perpetual, in theory, a perpetual ongoing expense, whereas this is a one-time to get us back to a point where it addresses an obvious need in communications. And if
How
we
long
address-
how long is that life of that asset, chief?
Well, I was waiting till everybody was finished. I'm not so sure it's a one-time piece.
Right.
Just so you know, because our radio communications folks have said this is the start to fixing our issue.
Okay.
And I'm not sure how deep it goes, because, you know, everything that they were talking about was quite expensive, and I'm like, I cannot go to them with this. I need an immediate fix that we can work off of, a good base. And that's what this piece is. So, I'll be honest with you, I don't know how deep it goes or how far it is. I'm hoping that this will take care of the issue, the primary issue, and then, you know, we can move on from
Is
there.
there-
But whatever you're gonna spend this money on, you're not gonna spend it on the same thing again, right? That's what so it's
Yeah.
really this 33.5, that whatever you're gonna spend it on is not gonna be reoccurring.
Correct.
It may not solve your issue, but
Right.
you're not gonna spend that money again on that same.
Yeah, it's not like
Whatever
a
you
down
put-
payment on
Right.
something.
No,
You
this
say
is all moving our equipment up to public safety grade.
Right.
So you're saying starting point, and that's what I wanna understand here, is that if starting point to what? What kind of can of worms? Do we have a comprehensive, I don't wanna open the top on this thing and find out that this 33.5 just became 10% of a $330,000 expenditure. I know that's me just kinda putting it out there. I just wanna know that, because I know that I'm gonna be held accountable to that when asked that question, so.
I figured I would be too, so
Right on.
I just haven't gone that deep with them, because they were starting to spend a lot of time trying to research what we would eventually need, and I'm like, well, hold on, let's go one piece at a time.
Okay.
So, but I can go that route as well.
Well, I think just maybe starting to get an understanding of that. Now, I see where you stopped that saying, let's get the immediate issues addressed and then talk about what everything, how this ties into the long-term, big picture. Yeah, that might be a good.
Is that your boy right there making all that racket?
I was gonna say, snow on the metal roof, but that's the only thing I can think of. Yeah, that somebody just hit the building.
Let's hope
That was
not.
pretty loud.
Yeah. Well, then, yeah, I guess, I think then personally we should,
Jeez.
I think personally then we should find out, cause if you're saying we really have no idea beyond the 33,000, right? So maybe we should wait to get more information on that then.
So, yeah, let's put it back on this wraparound. I was a big fan of talking about it and getting it done right now, but it sounds like we need a little bit more discussion.
But what I heard from Chief's perspective is he's got buy-in to the fact is that we're receptive to the idea to be able to begin that second piece, the dialogue, what's the rest of the cost potential?
Right, and how
We're
long.
not opposed to this to be able to do it. We know that it's a need to get us up to where we need to be, but how much beyond that is what we need to find out.
To determine how we fund it, we need to understand what it looks like
Right.
going down the line. I guess that's my take. I want to understand what this looks like a little bit farther down the line and what it's going to remedy.
And for how long?
Yeah, that's it.
And he may not be able to answer that, because
Well-
he's thinking that will solve it, and if it doesn't, what's the next step if it doesn't?
Salesmen will never tell you.
Well, I was going to say,
Yeah.
the comm experts are only going to
that's
tell
right.
you. The comm experts are only going to tell you what they can do for you, not what they can't.
Right,
You always buy more expensive gear.
okay.
But I
No,
think,
that's-
yeah,
that's good.
at least
We-
you know what we're looking for.
You got green light on the 33.5.
Fair enough. I'll reach out to him.
Thank you.
So you want this on future considerations, do you want me to take it off and fund it through the?
That was the way that we're gonna go, but we're gonna defer that to the final discussion.
Okay,
Right.
perfect, that's where I have it.
The,
Ten, yeah.
yeah,
All right.
the list. No, sorry, that's once again, it's a Lewiston term.
A big squirrel?
Oh, that's comforting.
It's one of those opossums. I
Well.
saw it on Facebook. They're nasty critters.
All right, the,
They're not bad with barbecue sauce.
Tastes like chicken.
Right.
Gamier though. All right, the white elephant in the room, I guess, would be the one item associated with the lieutenant's position. That's the one item that he had left that was on his list that you do see in the budget. It's clearly noted with benefits, that's a $104,000 item in his budget this year. Again with the crickets.
So what's the justification for adding back that lieutenant's position if it costs $100,000?
well, leadership opportunity, so again, hopefully it doesn't happen anytime soon, but we won't need to go outside for the next chief. You'll have somebody internally that's trained and prepared for the position. When I'm gone, sick, vacation, you have somebody that can stand in and make the appropriate decisions. It's, again, provides leadership opportunities. We have given all three sergeants different tasks, or they were given different tasks when the lieutenant left. So they're not necessarily being as functional as they should be, as productive as they should be, because they're spending their time doing a lot of administrative issues instead of our CID sergeant really should be doing more investigations. We need them in there, and the patrol sergeants are doing a lot more administrative items instead of being on the road. The issue with a small PD like us, we have, 2 patrol sergeants that aren't patrolling very much and aren't watching what their officers are doing because they're in the station doing administrative issues. So those are the 2 big items right there. Lack of oversight when it comes to if anybody does make a mistake and we get sued, one of the two first things they're gonna look at is people's training and the oversight from supervision. So it's just another piece.
Any opinions, one way or the other?
I'm sorry?
How many sergeants do we have?
We have 3. Two on patrol, 1 in detectives.
If we were to do the lieutenant, are we going to sergeant positions away? So that there would only be 2?
My eventual hope was that yes. I don't think that I need a detective sergeant, to be honest with you, if I have a lieutenant. In the past, the lieutenant oversaw CID, or criminal investigations. So my plan was to head back in that manner. Otherwise, I think we're a little top-heavy. So, but one of the issues with that is contingent on an internal, applicant. I hope that all 3 would put in, but I don't know that. What I don't want to do is have a situation where none of them put in.
And then you can.
I don't want to cut, that'd just be wrong, to cut a sergeant's position.
I'm way more open to that idea, cutting,
The
FD.
only way that I would agree to a lieutenant's position is if we lost one of the sergeant
Yeah.
positions.
It's hard to justify that amount of money for a leadership opportunity.
So which direction we wanna go with it?
I'll let them know.
That's 3.
Can't support it without, and I understand you laid it out very clearly, that unless we see one of the sergeants in-house apply for the position, then it would mean cutting a position, we have to go external. So, I absolutely can appreciate the need or the want and how it could benefit us down the line. Right now, I don't know that I can support that anyway.
I agree with Norm. I mean, I feel the same way.
So do we leave it in, or do we, I'm here, what am I hearing? The fact is, internal candidate, the fact is one position go away, be one of these sergeant's positions, but he can't control that.
Right.
Right, and then that's the wild card.
Yeah, you can't say, well, you can have it only if one of the sergeants apply.
Right. I think we'd all be a
From
big
the
yes.
budget
if,
standpoint,
yeah.
I'm sure the union would have issues with that too, the way that would be
They
crafted.
might have something to say about
So are we saying cut, or are we saying
I would cut it.
it. At this time,
now, or the list?
I think, it's okay to put it, I'm okay with putting it on the list, but that's just me,
It's a cut, is
I-
what
I
I'm,
think-
I'm hearing 5 cut right now.
yeah.
Do we cut tonight, do we cut later?
I think the majority, I don't mind being the only one that says put on the list, but it sounds like to me,
Well,
I don't
put it
know.
on the list, what else will we get out of it?
no, I think we're gonna still have the same conversation down the line, the only thing different is that if financially we find a pot of gold somewhere along the way, and we can support it. While highly unlikely, I guess I'd like to
Being
keep.
optimistic.
Exactly, I'd like to keep a little bit of optimism in this budget process, because the worst possible case scenario, I don't think the chief has any illusions that even if we do the wraparound, if the money's not there, we'll probably end up in the same spot. But there's a slight, ray of hope that maybe something shakes loose and we can find a way. But if you guys think that's just pie in the sky and you wanna take care of it tonight, you understand, I support exactly that position. I don't think we can actually afford this position without losing a sergeant's role. And since we can't control that, I think if we have to make that decision, we take it out tonight. But,
I need a motion,
I'll make it.
cut tonight,
I'll second.
vote on that. I know, it's just straw polling now, obviously.
Good job.
I'm straw polling, absolutely. No official vote associated, but if we're making a cut, we're cutting tonight, is what I'm hearing. That's,
yep,
all right, lieutenant's position is cut.
So you can always change your mind later on.
yeah, no, I understand, we can always go back, it's not a big deal, I think we know what we're working with.
Any other, to recap what's associated with this, we're talking about fund balance on the radios, cut of the lieutenant's position, and a potential second card available to getting us in a better position with the fleet. Any other specific line item cuts that anybody is actually seeing for this department at this time?
We're still going through negotiations. yeah.
That's active, so some of the things that we may want to, I think that we're not talking about those, but they'll be talked about actively somewhere down the line when we get to those discussions in executive session probably.
Anything else?
I don't know about the cruiser, as far as like the information that I have. I'm thinking, so roughly around 80,000, 100,000 miles for a replacement, right? That's roughly, you'd wanna replace the, what was it, 93 or?
Yeah, I wouldn't want one on the road at 100,000 or beyond. And most of the studies that you'll see, if you Google it, you'll look it up, nobody really thinks from a liability standpoint, a car should be on the road over 100,000. And what you can do is you move it off the road and put it into CID. The detectives could then drive it, because they're not driving at high speed responding to calls. We have the 2 Fusions that are 09s, so you can swap them out and move these cars over. But, I wouldn't want, car 4 right now is 93, almost 94,000 miles.
Cause I'm thinking more to repair rather than replace, but I haven't seen the numbers, I'm not gonna argue with it, if the numbers are in favor of replacing it, then I'm all for it, but it's a transmission issue, right?
Wear and tear, you name it, on a vehicle, from the transmission to, everything on the underside, it's just, they're hard miles to put on a vehicle, so
How much
it's,
do you think we could get out of the ones that we replace? To put on auction?
It's the 2 years of interest payments.
Do you have an idea on that?
not on the SUVs, generally speaking, the Crown Vics, we were getting $1,000 or $2,000, it just,
It's just worn down so much.
Yeah,
Use,
yeah.
So it's-
people are
Since
nervous
if you-
about what they're gonna put into them.
Right, if you give it to somebody else in the town that uses their vehicle, it makes more sense to get $1,000 out of it.
Maybe we should go for the BMW.
But I've heard that, I don't know how true this is, but I have heard from some state employees that the state will buy an abundance of these cruisers, not do anything with them, they sit up there in Augusta, and
When
then
we want.
why don't
We can do
people
it offline,
do,
it's-
do it when they do the auctions, get bids on those ones?
On new, the state's buying,
The state will buy
well,
quantity,
we're buying at the state government rate when we purchase them.
right, but I'm saying that the state itself will buy it, you just sit there in this little,
I haven't heard of that other than for their own use.
and then whatever they don't use,
Thank you.
I mean, if they're bringing vehicles sitting there, and if that is the case, then I would rather,
Yeah, I've just never heard that.
like I said, I don't know how true
Yeah.
it is, it's just.
Might be worth checking out just to see.
Yeah.
Are there any departments that have experimented with like BMW or any?
Do you know how much it costs
No, I
to
know.
replace parts on that?
Let him finish, let him
I
finish.
I understand, but
He-
as far
No,
as.
no, I
you
was,
know,
let him finish.
I'm seeing price tags already, would you
I
say?
know.
You're not letting him finish.
When you're doubling the mileage on vehicles like that because they're built with stronger material, better material, I didn't know if it's been experimented with. I'm sure it's different, being a cop and driving it rather than, an average citizen, but I didn't know that.
It's brakes and front end parts mostly.
Yeah, you know how much a set of brakes?
Yeah, I know,
Right.
But again,
We're talking
you know,
Bra-
when you're
bra- brakes-
doubling
brakes and
mileage on
tires.
these cars.
Right, I mean, if you
Wear
use,
and
right, some
tear
cars get a
is
lot more
100%.
mileage than other
Well,
cars.
I'm sure,
yeah.
I'm sure you have an understanding of what seems to be the industry standard, what law enforcement genuinely gravitate towards to use for policing,
What
yeah.
we're driving now.
I know,
Ford, yeah,
Ford
Right.
is the
It's just
industry
a thought.
standard right now.
Exactly.
Because I see, you know, with people that
Better
need
quality
the
vehicle.
value, yeah, you
Yeah.
know, they hold their value.
Remember back,
Better than other
I can
cars.
just say,
I don't
from
know
the
of anybody
standpoint
doing
of looking at purchasing on an SUV type BMW, you know,
It's either-
regular
it's either
standard wear and tear
Ford-
was
Ford
over
or Charger.
$800,
I
Yeah.
think
just
more than-
brakes.
Well, it's like him wanting to buy
We
$100
experienced
to pick one or the
chairs, that
other.
makes
Lisbon
sense.
experimented with Volvo back in the 80s. That was a good time. That was a good time.
I'm just thinking more along the line,
Well, it
Like a Toyota or something, where you
We're
get a
gonna
lot
get-
more
Right.
mileage out of
Stand
it.
alone.
Yeah.
Right,
We
exactly.
won't hit that tonight.
Maybe a little high end, but I mean,
Thanks.
like, you know, buy a Toyota to get more,
Yeah,
you
we
know,
still
you get
get
200,000 instead of
firepower.
100,000.
We're already,
Yes, yeah.
So
When,
the
uh,
festival-
When that
Right.
second conversation came around on the cruiser, Diane mentioned another option as well too, is trying to implement the second cruiser this year versus the way that it was originally presented to be able to address the mileage issue. The second cruiser purchase could be considered out of that fund balance as well, to get it started, because by the time the second two would actually be out, would be 3 years out, the thing that would have been eliminated with 2 years of the debt service on the lease payments that are out there, and then you'd just have the hit that would actually come off. So basically, it would be position neutral on the budget, as effect is funding in the current year, 2020 budget, to be able to absorb it, but not having it increase this year. So we're fixing the cruiser that ultimately didn't get purchased 2 years ago.
What was the balance that we figured out, the fund balance?
It's like, with the overlay funds, it was 679 or
Yeah.
some foolish number like that.
So
So,
we'd be looking at what? 70,000 for the vehicle, for the,
no, one.
oh,
Just
we're
one,
only
just
talking
one.
one.
Just
One
the-
out of
just
that
the
and then one
second-
budgeted.
The second,
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
So just out of that,
Out of the 679.
So one budget has
One
no,
would come out of the
snow and
one-
and one is a
679.
standalone one-time purchase to get us back up to the one.
686, we'd add another 35,000 to that.
That makes sense.
So it'd be 686? Is that the,
Well,
The
the
total
total of
fund.
all those items that I thought we could take out of unassigned fund balance total 686,000 right now. So we would add the cruiser to that, so add another 35.
and that's just a working list too, by the way.
It's just a working list, and then don't forget your overlay that's gonna lapse in unassigned, so the net effect right now is 486,000, and just add 35 more thousand to that.
Short answer, yes, please add that to the fund balance discussion to be able to write that, because I'm not really prepared to lose $35,000
Adding on to this.
added on
Yeah.
to what we have for a budget
Lovely.
number right now.
Yeah, we'll wrap around on, it's gonna be one of the discussion items, we'll hit back on, see where we land. But that way it gets us the two, just to kinda go back to wrap around so we're all clear on this, it gets us the two cruises this year and puts us in a position so that next year when it comes around, we're looking at a one purchase, if anything.
Yeah.
Right.
Great. And it goes back to a 2-in-1 model versus a one every year, which is what we kinda talked about, wasn't sustainable at the beginning of this whole piece.
So we're gonna gear up a couple RAV4s. Is that the plan?
Flight patrol's
We're gonna-
looking good
we're gonna
again,
get
right?
some sweet Kia Souls. That's gonna be a mess to have to get accessories. Yeah, the accessories add-ons for the Kias are gonna be brutal. All right?
You guys are amazing. Any other discussions on this? Moving right along then.
Animal control?
Yes, sir.
What's that?
No, no.
Losing
Sit-
that?
He's-
Oh, no, I took the
He's
over.
totally making- he's totally
I took
making
the
a
over.
buck.
I take the over. It's just gonna be a push till next meeting.
What happened? I should've came in.
No, you didn't want part of that, actually. That's fooling his money right there.
Easy money right there, easy money.
So right off the bat with animal control under wages, I believe you folks have the wrong number.
Yes.
Your page probably shows 36,407, and it should show 39,405. So the next question will be, what is that extra 3,000? And that is the part-time animal control officer that we hired this year.
Quite specifically, Mr. Red.
He was brought on to cover when the full-time animal control officer is on vacation or sick, just to better cover, to provide better coverage. So it wasn't initially budgeted for in last year's budget. I believe he was brought on in July or August, but, yes, it should show 39,405.
Years prior, where was it actually picked up if it's never been budgeted? Any idea?
We had, our current full-time animal control officer, Cooper, was basically not taking his time off because he was concerned about the fact that there was nobody to cover for him. So he had an overabundance of time that he's been told to take, and now he's been able to take due to the fact that we have
Right.
somebody to cover.
Right.
So you talked to him in November and said, see you in the spring?
That's gonna increase the, some of the other accounts, like the workers' comp, unemployment.
Right, the
FICA.
3,000's not in there.
I've got that, all of that on another sheet here, but I'll update for the next meeting.
So then moving along, overtime, we have been able to, when I first came here in September, we were already at roughly 70+% of our overtime had been spent in the first few months. So just in case you've ever heard any complaints about it, or maybe I haven't told you, but basically, we've started a standing order where we only respond out of normal business hours to public safety emergencies. Animal control officer had been responding to pretty much anything, no matter what time of day or night it was. And so we needed to control the bleeding in the overtime account. Plus, to be honest with you, there was really no need of him coming out all the time, just for some of the complaints that he was coming out
Or
for.
something.
Yeah, exactly. So, so either of them, actually now, if it's not in normal business hours, they'll come out if it's something of public safety emergency response required, but other than that, they don't come out. So, and that's been able to control the budget for that piece.
That's a standing order for all of next year? Saying, you don't expect, life's threatening, the term used, for what they would actually come out for?
For animal control, yes. If,
And that's-
you know, if
that's-
it's a dog bite,
Yep.
you know, rabid animal, something not just, I see a skunk walking on my lawn or something, but if
No.
it's some genuine public safety emergency, we respond, we'll respond to it, but, we're not just coming out for anything, a missing dog or something.
Squirrel in my attic or
Okay.
something.
Yeah, exactly.
It's coming right
Can I-
at you.
Well, where I was going with that is playing devil's advocate. Can we fund the $3,000 increase that's not on this out of the overtime line if that's actually gonna be the standing operating for next year? Do we expect to actually be at 5,500 or would we be considerably less because of the change of operations?
I was gonna ask that too. If it's under budget, why is there an increase?
It's gonna be over budget this year, but I'm hoping that we won't incur anywhere near the $5,000 next year. Is that what you were coming at, Mr. Crawford?
It's gonna be
Which,
over?
which
Gonna
one's
be
gonna
under.
over? Overtime. Which line are you looking at?
That same one, overtime.
We only have well, as of this date, we only have $343 left in the overtime account.
But I think what you were driving at was that chief's order will change that drastically. There won't be as much overtime for next calendar year because,
You look at that report?
I'm not looking at the report.
No, I'm looking at Mr. Crawford.
I'm just
I'm
looking
not
at
on the
this
same
right
page
now.
he is, I'm trying to figure. Yeah, basically what he's telling you in that line is that he expects to actually exceed the 50/70 for this year. So he's gone to a $5,500 budget. I'm hopeful that we won't come in anywhere near that if he's got a new operating in
How much
play.
do you expect to be actually able to save with those changes to the procedure?
Well, and this is where I'm at a loss due to my lack of longevity here. I'm not really sure. I wanted to have a safe number in there, just so I didn't have people coming to me going, you didn't budget enough. But I have a feeling that that's gonna drop.
I will be optimistic and I will actually recommend we go to 2,500 and hope that that changes, because in that regard, what you can, council supports your position, and that can be what you actually use for the soundbite.
Yeah, I actually have the data here with me from 2013. We spent 3,600 on overtime in animal control in 2013. So that's, some historical reference there, what we were spending. So I might recommend maybe 3,000 instead of 2,500,
Okay.
just to be sure that we're not, way under budgeting.
Okay.
But I don't want people to be,
So take-
feel they can't go out if there's a dog bite or something. Well, I don't have any overtime left in my account, I can't go out.
321, so this is it.
So budget 3,000?
Yep, my recommendation would be to take 2,500 out of that budget line. Continue on, sir, sorry.
No, not a problem. Professional development. Basically, we have 2 animal control officers now, so I doubled the previous 300 to 600. Even though he's a part-time position, he needs certain training to qualify to respond every year. So that's what that piece is. The next few line items have all been supplied by the town manager. And then we get down to uniforms. Trying to find my spot here. Okay, so uniforms, we have 2 people now, so I doubled that number, which is basically how I came up with the 1,200. Cellular phones was another item that was provided.
Is that just one shared phone? Sorry, I didn't mean to jump in there. One shared phone that's handed off from officer to officer?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's actually, well, it will be handed off if it's a vacation type situation.
Right.
But right now, they just call him on his, the reserve officer, they call him on his phone.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, thank you.
yep.
Is
Sir?
the 500 gonna make up the shortfall, cause he's already in the red by $50? I know that's one that you don't get, you get it from finance, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'll have to check.
Can you look at that, just cause he's already short $50?
Yep.
I just wanna make sure that we're not leaving him dry.
Good. Okay.
Sorry.
There's also a different, another cut that I can safely make, I believe, which is services and software agreement. After initially putting in the 250, I've been asking around, trying to find out what we actually were using that money for. If you look back at 2016, we never used it. I was told it was initially put in 2013, and hasn't been spent since then. So,
Zero?
0, exactly.
That's for
Services
Software and
software.
services.
Then, shelter fees. We have been told by the Coastal Humane Society that the shelter fee will not be going up this year.
Right.
And veterinary services. Veterinary services is one of those situations where we haven't used it all. However, it's a possibility with any day that, you know, if we come across an animal that's been struck, we don't know who it belongs to, we take it to the, we take it to the veterinary services. One fee could be that much if we don't find who the owner of the animal is. So that's one of those ones you can look at cutting. I looked at it repeatedly, but it's only gonna take one incident to use all of that money or more. So that's why it's left right there at $750. I actually raised it just because the fees of everybody's fees are going up. If anybody has pets, you know that, so I put a little more in there just in case. Then moving right along, repair and maintenance of equipment. You know, for the animal control, this is a situation where, you know, we've got kennels, cages, poles, et cetera, that he carries for use in his day-to-day business, and that's what those fees are for.
Is that correct that he's not expended anything yet? He's only spent $1.38?
That would be correct, sir. I addressed this a few weeks ago, asking what we needed and why we haven't addressed it, so I'm waiting to
Okay,
hear
okay,
back through
so
his
his
supervisor.
spring
Yes, sir.
shopping list is being generated?
Yes. Operating supplies. Operating supplies, again, is just more of what he has to use. We've gone over budget the last 2 years, and so I just put it up to 300. In 2016, we used 359. We're already at 320. I put it up to 300 till I get a better idea of what we need and what we don't need. Tires, I dropped the amount down to 200 because we just purchased tires for him that will be used in the next budget year, with the budget money that we had this year. So we should be good, other than, again, the perhaps road debris struck or flat tire for some unknown reason that we can't address or we can't plug. So the tires, we should be good, which is why we've dropped it. And then equipment, and under equipment, this is more of the day-to-day use type smaller items, which would be microchip reader for animal that we come across, or thick gloves that an animal can't bite through, and so forth. And that's the end of the animal control piece.
Any questions on this budget, guys?
Pretty straightforward on this one.
What did you say, what did you decide with the overtime?
I'm hopeful the fact is his new policy change will actually fund the wages position that wasn't incorporated in this. You'll look at that document there and you see that it says 36,407. He told us that it was gonna be 39,405. We talked about cutting 2,500 off the overtime from 5,500 down to 3,000. So if nothing else, we didn't cut anything, but
Okay,
we've,
okay, it's just
we
moving
flat
it
funded
over?
it, flat funded it pretty much
get
as
ya.
he presented it.
I get ya.
And hopeful that in doing so, sending the message that we actually support his position on that.
Down to 3.
Right. I got nothing else, I mean, cause like you said, the only one that stands out there is the, veterinary services, looking at the trend over the last 2 years, but we've been fortunate over the last 2 years
Right.
too. That's moving right along if nobody has anything else. Communications.
Communications. Okay. So, excuse me, communications, we have wages. We're currently in negotiations right now as far as contract that communications officers are involved in. And, oh, I'm sorry, I gotta switch one page here.
The under wages in this budget, the current budget, when we went back through the spreadsheet, we inadvertently left out step increases for 3 employees, so that's why you see such a big increase over current budget. The amount in the current budget is wrong.
So the 185 is the suspect.
Yes.
That looked a little strange.
Thank you, because that answers my question, why we're way over 2%.
Overtime, overtime is basically for, in this particular case, overtime is for the unforeseen loss of personnel. Other than, we only have, generally speaking, 1 communications officer on at any time or reserve with them. So anytime a communications officer is off, they need to be replaced. So we're replacing them, but we're replacing them with either sick time or vacation time or so forth. So to be honest with you, overtime is only used, again, if for some reason a regular full-time dispatcher isn't there. So if we could cut there, barring the loss, this is one of those situations where it's unforeseen. If we have an unforeseen loss of personnel, we would have an issue with overtime. The amount that we've used this year was we had a new communications officer that was hired, and we had to send him to training, which took 2 to 3 weeks of training. We had somebody filling in, and that's where the overtime is, right there. But, so that's the situation we're in with overtime. Temporary part-time reserve dispatchers. Basically, we have, right now, we have 5 reserve communications officers. They're scheduled to work 24 hours weekly. We bring one in Friday nights from 5 to 1 at night, Saturday night from 5 to 1, and Sunday from 6 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon. So 24 hours scheduled weekly is what we have for them. And right now, we're on track to expend $18,300. I figured in potential 2% raise, and that's where we roughly came up with the 19,000. Vacation sick replacement, as of right now, or as of last Friday, we're over budget. To be honest with you, I'm not sure why. I'm not sure where the mistake was made as far as this particular piece goes, but it is what it is at this point, so that's why I have the 14,000 in there. And moving along, training. We're currently over. Training and professional development generally go together. Training is actually overtime while somebody is at training. So where I'm also requesting to raise the communications officer's training by 20%, I raised the training account by 20% to make up for the overtime while the officers are gone.
Can we hold right there just with payroll? Looking at that last line, holiday personal day, 2005 we spent 14, 2006 we spent 14.7. Year to date, we're roughly around 12. Do we see, even with your 20%, getting above the 17.5 that's currently budgeted based on our current amount left in that account?
Well, when I ran these numbers initially for what you're reading, it was in January, and we were projected to spend 16.5, so there
Okay,
hasn't
so
been, there hasn't
16
been much spent in the last winter. Isn't really a big
Right.
vacation time, so with spring coming,
Yes, what you're saying, okay, okay, that's the reason I was asking. And the other one, I was at the same, scratching my head as you were, she partially answered the 3 steps that are missing from the wages to get to the jump from the 185 to the 196, but I'm looking at, frankly, what the hell is going on with your line items when you're already over budget and you still got 4 months to actually factor into this? trying to cushion the impact. Going back to your comment made associated with overtime, given the increases to write it, I'm inclined to actually want to cut 2,000 off that account to actually afford some sort of cushion, leave the rest of them as they are, and hope that we don't incur the overtime, is where I'm coming at it from.
I had a note to myself that I felt we could safely cut 1,500 to 2,000 if needed.
Based on that recommendation, I would, those few lines, unless anybody's seeing else that I'm not seeing, that's the only thing I see is the overtime is the one that stands off. Especially if he thinks that we're gonna be above the 17.5 and holiday training pay. Those are the only two counts that I saw, is that I had a $1,500 figure, but that was just based on the 96. You say you have a better handle on what that 96 is gonna represent over the rest of the year, and I have to defer to you. So I would make that recommendation, as we cut 2,000 out of the overtime account and call the rest good, unless anybody else is seeing anything on those lines.
Well, I had a quick question about
Thank you.
going back to the 5114. You said you're 331 over budget, and you said you're not sure where the mistake was made.
I just don't, yeah.
Well,
Basically, in budget.
Do we know, should we try to figure out the mistake or just hide behind a budget increase? You know, I think we should probably try to figure out what's going on there instead of just tacking another, $1,100 on.
And I apologize, I guess what I meant was, when I said I don't understand the mistake, I don't understand when Chief Brooks did the budgeting, why he set a lower number. And,
Oh, okay.
I'm trying to leave him alone and not call him as much as I initially was, so.
Yeah, especially when you, to your point, Mr. Crawford, 2015, we spent 13.5, 2016, 10.9.
Right.
At this point, we're already at 13.4. So I think the issue with Chief's anomaly, meaning Chief Brooks at the time, is he looked at the 10.9. It was arbitrarily low.
Right, and they brought it down to
Not-
12.9, I
Yes,
see.
exactly. I think that's what ultimately happened there.
So it's back up to essentially where it should be, right?
Correct,
Okay.
correct. Because over that 2015 to now, the 14 seems to be more in line with that.
The holiday and personal looks like it's off the opposite way.
Yeah, that's,
Too high?
I'm just wondering if something got coded wrong during payroll. Because, you've got 9,500 still left in that account.
well, could you see if there was something that actually potentially might be there? Because again, that brings up the
Yeah.
$1,500 question, that if we
Yeah.
would cut that the holiday personal day line item, because if that number is arbitrarily high because it belonged in the other line.
Yeah, I'll check that out.
Thank you, sir. Keep going.
I think we're down to mileage. Mileage hasn't, we haven't spent anything in mileage. We've been using cruisers, so it hasn't been an issue. I'm not sure what the future would bring, so I put $180 in there. But, so that's where that number is. It won't always be an option to have the vehicles, so I thought $180 was a safe number. Professional development is the actual training. So right now, we're projected to expend all $800 of the budget for training. If you look right now, you'll see there's $563 left. The big training that most communications officers go to is in the spring, so that's why there's an abundance left, but it's coming right up in the end of April, I believe, so. And the rest, the next few lines were all provided. Our manager's office, we get down to uniforms and safety. Right now, we budget, per contract, $350 per communications officer, which gets us up to the 1,400. potential for having to hire a new officer. I've got some extra in there. We're also looking at possibly changing over to a soft uniform instead of the typical uniform. So if we do that, we have to pay a couple of upfront embroidery fees to switch over. So I just left some wiggle room there as far as that goes. Recruitment testing, that is if we need to hire anybody new. We haven't, as you can see, used any of the money this year. We haven't had to hire in this fiscal budget. I put some money in there just in case we do need to hire in the future budget. R&M equipment, repair and maintenance of equipment, we have $1,125 in there. Just for anything out of all the equipment that they have, if something were to break, that is either more than enough or it's not nearly gonna be enough if it's some of the terminal equipment that we were to have an issue with. And then office supplies.
Chief, on that one, still $1,125 available from last year?
Yes, knock on wood, if I had a piece, nothing has broken in,
Right, no way, good news for a
Yes, sir.
change, right? Yeah.
we also will have a bill coming up for our recording system, and that will be almost $1,000.
Okay,
Put in my notes here, so.
good thing you didn't knock.
I'm gonna say it again, just, it's the same as the other one that we have,
5152?
town, yes, sir. Town employees have free access to the
MTM?
ATM.
You can come to the union negotiations.
I
if you
would
want.
love to, I would love to. I'd be like, come on, guys.
No, I'm sure you did.
I have.
Pretty much across the standard, across all contracts.
She's on it, Mr. Crawford.
As soon as you started, I was like, you beat me to it. That's
I had to say it,
That's good. That's good stuff.
that's all I got.
What about you, Alan?
Mine was just the wages, because the fact is it was disproportionate for the accounts that are already over budget and the ones that stood off, so we already took care of those. Obviously, when Diane does the adjustments, she's gonna factor in the reduction from the FICA because of the wages as well, so that'll do that, but yeah, if she could just find out on the personal day holiday, if there's something that's miscoding and potentially bring that back, maybe we could address that at that follow-up meeting.
Yep.
That's all I had. Anybody else? Any other questions? Any more for Chief? He's done, right?
Thank you, sir.
Yeah,
for your
thank you
time.
very much for your time.
Appreciate it.
It was a long time.
10 minutes overdue.
All right, we're not going back. No, you keep that. I'm sure.
Doubling up the next
That's
week?
right. Let's do it up. See you next Tuesday. Stretch my legs before we
Dropped my phone at a concert.
We can forego the singing of happy birthday to me today, but that's
Oh, it's his
okay.
birthday?
Spending it.
How about the beatings?
That's every day, so that
Are you 26? 26, 27?
we'll go with that.
Happy birthday. Thank you, Chief.
Yes.
Pretty bad. Like every 5 minutes, I have no service.
What show?
Excision.
There's
We had to go find what was making that noise.
Game
No,
Box.
you didn't find it.
And
You
Top
didn't.
I know, brother. I've had 3 screens
Oh, the
replaced
prisoners escaping
there.
from down there.
Tony, my buddy.
The screen that shattered?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I don't remember.
Up on the. Remember, I was taking a video and then I dropped it. I don't know why. I was stone sober.
I wasn't even drunk.
Right?
I tell that story too.
At least we didn't get lost this time,
Yeah.
or his insurance.
That happened once.
Yeah.
Happened once. I dropped my wife's phone. And then I bought life-proof cases. No more.
Yeah. Next phone I get, I'm going to. Sorry.
Are we waiting for Mr.
No,
Kraft?
we're Mr.
Oh,
Kraft
okay.
anyways.
Okay, good. You guys wanna talk bad about him while he's gone?
I'm not going after that lineage locally. No way. That's just fool's talk, man.
I hope he talks more about real estate. That's what I wanna hear about.
That's funny.
The good news is he doesn't need any equipment except for the funding. Next year, we're not so fortunate.
Anybody know about Larry? Anybody seen Larry?
I've heard that the
He's watching CSI.
freedom of access requests have been jumped up again, right? From him?
I'm surprised we haven't seen him in so long here.
No, I thought he took a stance that after, I don't remember what it was that you guys were discussing.
Communication stuff.
After the communications meeting.
That was it for him?
Yeah.
I guess I missed that memo.
He finally threw the towel in.
I didn't know.
Yep.
I thought I genuinely thought he was sick.
And he said he's gonna watch NCIS like
Yeah,
the rest of the town.
Good strategy. It's an
Good show.
approach.
It's a good show.
It's an approach.
Should I catch up on it on Netflix, or where are we going with this?
You can do that. You could do that. You could do
I
that.
do feel bad that somebody feels so frustrated.
I used to like
they just
Emergency.
don't wanna get involved in it.
Oh, I had an emergency lunchbox.
Man Tooth and everything. Those guys were badass back in the day.
Yeah.
Life choices. You keep talking about it. I know.
Talking about.
Emergency?
You never
That
saw
was good
Emergency?
TV back in the 80s, man.
Yeah.
70s.
I had an emergency
When did it come out?
lunchbox. Yeah, 70s.
I wasn't born yet. Sorry, guys.
It's all right. It's okay.
Yeah, we watched it in Signature.
Yeah, that's it. Like MASH and all those other ones. Okay.
So I wanna thank everybody here for coming tonight and sticking to your
Cassie's
guns.
got a bedtime at 10, so let's keep moving.
That's fine, so. I wanna kinda just put out firsthand, that my budget, or the fire department budget, I can't really say my budget, our budget, if you're looking at, the major increase that we have is basically the capital plan that is included in the budget, and that's the truck replacement program like we talked about. Taking that progressive step, trying to refire up that plan and make sure that we're gonna have funding that's gonna be available later on. We're trying to do that. So, without that increase this year, we would have been at a 2.4 increase in the amount of 10 grand. So, but with the increase, we're at a significant larger percentage there at 20% in the amount of 85.7. So, but keep that in mind. I'm just kind of, setting that seed only for the fact that if you're looking at our basic budget, we were really only, at 2.4%. So, account number 5101, director manager wages, that's basically my wages, and that came from the town manager with the percentage increase, which will be going down because you requested for a smaller increase there, so. Also on the 5110 wages, that's the wages for the fire department for all the on-call. That's included, with the 2% that came from the town. We'll have to come back to that one, or we
Yeah,
can get
but
in-
no, let's get into it now, because
Okay.
you're under budget, over budget.
I'm over budget right now. So last year, after our budget was already approved, we had a budgetary change or a payroll change in how we were gonna actually pay our firefighters. Mrs. Barnes went to a seminar, or whatever it was, found out that the state law stated that you can't hold somebody's wages for longer than 15 days or whatever it was, or 2 days. So I was instructed to go to a full pay period every time, every time. So we were on a pay-per-point type system. I tried to envelop a pay-per-point, kind of stay on that same system, but it became a pay-per-call idea. Estimated what our call volume was and everything else, and it came down to a little bit of under forecasting, as you can see, because of those numbers. When we first discussed that, we did say that this is gonna be like a 3-year kind of a figure out where we wanna be type of thing, so there's gonna be some fluctuating numbers in there that, over 3 years. So I'm looking at now with us, where we're sitting right now, that system isn't working as well, because right now we have they're getting a call-out rate, everybody's getting the same call-out rate, which is like $20, and what we estimated, when we actually did the math, it came out a lot higher than that. And when we discussed, Deputy Chief Leclerc is here, and when we talked about that, we came down to $20 a call, and that would work out well. Well, with the, not with the idea, but with the dictation of, you guys gotta put time cards in for everything you're doing. They're putting time cards in for everything they're doing. Now, there's a training rate, there's a firefighter 1 rate, there's a bunch of different rates there. Not having a just on seeing exactly what everybody was stepping up and doing, that that hammered us a little bit here. So we've been putting it out saying, you never want to ask people not to do anything by all means, because we're still a volunteer-based type organization. People are doing things because they want to do things, but we're leading into that more of having to pay everybody for what they're doing. So I want to revamp that in the out of the budget that we're doing right now that we get approved at, and figure it out the same idea of the pay per point, but get everybody a base pay. So it's more true to what a true job would be. When you're out there, you get a base pay. The deputies, if we have a deputy paramedic, he's going to be at the top rate, right? And he's going to be at the top, and everybody else is basically going to be below them. It'll be geared on their rank structure, because we want people to move up, and what their qualifications are, and we've already established those. It's just putting a rate there. So nobody would be getting a stipend right now. Is they're getting a stipend plus they're getting their call out rate. We'll get rid of all of that, and you're going to get a base amount for whatever your rank structure is and what your payment is. So, and make it, fall within as close to the parameters that we've already established. Because doing this was, if we start doing pay per hour and here we go, we're borderline on that. We're not full-time by any means, but you're paying people per hour. We could blow payroll, that payroll line right out of the water, and the goal to do that is to find a common medium so everybody benefits as much as we can. So.
Sean, I just have a question on that. You're responding more to the Lisbon emergency calls now than you ever have. How is that factored into this?
Our first responder calls, remember we established our first responder, and this last year was the first year to really run the numbers on that. We're up a typical almost 100 calls in our first responder, adding the first responder
So that's
program.
playing into this
So
as
that's
well.
playing into that as well.
Okay.
Right. So. Clear as mud.
No,
Kind of.
you lost me on that left turn.
Our call volume is up.
No,
because
I get
we-
the call volume, but the fact that she asked the question is, so basically that's what you wanted to hear, is the fact is,
Yeah, I mean,
it's,
that's
it's,
playing a
it's tied, it's
factor
tied
into
into, it's tied into the $4,000 that they actually pay us.
No.
No.
No, because
It's not
we're
a-
first
it's-
responding with Lisbon Emergency now.
So
on
it's in
certain
tandem.
calls. That's brought, we're dispatched more, so there's more we're going on more calls.
That impacts his budget.
And that impacts the budget because we're paying.
Your
for
call volume went out.
Our call
The
volume.
call volume adjustment, okay.
Right.
That's what I would, thank you for the clarification.
We-
I didn't
we
wanna draw the
typically
direct line
before
of the fact that
first
there was something that
responder, we're-
Lisbon Emergency was not doing, which is not the case.
No.
No.
It is just the nature of our response has changed because
Correct.
you're going in tandem with them.
Correct.
Okay.
We typically, before our first responder program, we're 250 to 300 calls a year. We're over 300 calls a year now. Sometime we've been close to, we're at 390, I think, for last year. So almost 400 calls. So there's a significant value there.
Okay.
That adds up on that.
And that's gonna be factored into that same model.
Correct.
Associated with that, so your volume goes up,
Well, I have a better average with last year's
Right,
numbers.
right.
Call
your call volume by type, and you actually
Right.
come up with the rates that you were talking about to fix that model.
Yep. So that's the wage line. So account 5120 mileage 700 provides travel expenses for.
Can I ask just a
Oh,
little
I'm
question?
sorry.
No? How are you gonna make up the difference in the shortfall from the budget this year within fire?
I have an officers meeting this Thursday night, and that's gonna be a topic of discussion. So per diems are probably gonna be cut, not cut completely, but our per diem hours are gonna be lowered. And then ideally, if we can kind of have some people, we still have people going to firefighter one, so that's,
Right.
but we're gonna try to do the best that we can as well. Calls, we're at the mercy of calls.
Right.
Everybody, understands that, so.
Okay.
And the department pretty much is on board. They know where we're standing. I've been upfront with them all along, and, we said, hey, guess what? It's not
Right.
gonna be $20 a call next year, so keep that in mind, or
Right.
an hour.
And operationally, you need to make it up before the end of June, too. Right.
Right,
So-
right, yeah, we need to be, I know,
Right.
do the best we can.
We're
so
on the
that-
same page.
So bottom line comes out is yes.
Right.
Yep. Mileage, accounts, provides travel expenses for the above-listed employees, and if you've seen that's kind of, hasn't gone anywhere the last year or two. The idea of that was, typically if we have a group that goes to National Fire Academy in Emmitsburg, Maryland, that pays for the van for their travel. We haven't had anybody go down to Emmitsburg, Maryland for National Fire Academy, so, it's there. It's also for, the fire chiefs conference is this weekend, so if the deputies drive their vehicles up there, they can put mileage in for that. It does the same thing there, so. Professional development, 5121, provides both fire and first responder medical training and dues expense for the above listed for everybody. That's typically at 10,000. If we have an influx of newer people that come in, that pays for firefighter one, that's all professional development comes out of that. 5130 FICA was compounded from the town manager's office. Retirement, same thing. Workman's comp, same office. Medical insurance, ouch, same office. As well as unemployment. So the account, 5140, uniforms and safety, is that, I don't think I've changed that in the 15 years. This is my 15th budget. I don't think I've changed that since then. So that's basically my uniforms for me.
You're over budget.
I am this year.
Should we?
Huh?
Should we adjust it? If you're
I
over?
don't think we do. And that depends if I have to buy a jacket or a pair of boots. Lots
So
of
this
times.
is an anomaly. Okay. All right.
I'm not. The uniform cleaning budget provides cleaning and supply of Class A uniforms for the entire membership. I did have, I have I had a couple promotions, so changing their uniforms are gonna be in there, and then I have two that are in firefighter one right now, 3 that are gonna be getting Class A uniforms, so that'll be coming. It says uniform cleaning, but it's actually supplying Class A for the entire membership. And then the banquet's coming up, and I hope to see all of you there. But,
IRCP tonight.
yeah, but with that may come up to cleaning too, because somebody would spill something on their uniform.
Like what?
You want me to change my RSVP? You saying I'm okay?
No, not at all. I don't say things are thrown at people, I just say
Well, not right off.
in the beginning, right? Physicals provides baseline physical expenses for the employees listed above, includes yearly mandated requirements for main respiratory. Pre-employment physical, everybody's understood about our pre-employment physical. It's a pretty intense physical, gives us baselines on everybody that, as we hire. On a firefighter based, they do blood work that's based on the fire department, so that 5 years from now, we can check and see if somebody's lead levels are higher than normal, that type of thing, so. Yearly mandated respiratory questionnaire, which runs about $100 to $155 per person, and any vaccinations that are required for emergency responders, so that's it, $5,000. Cell phones are pretty much from the front office, postage and delivery, same idea. Sewer, self-explanatory,
Diane's gonna look into that again with the proposed.
with the proposal that they had. Telephone, same thing, water,
Can we go back to telephones?
oh, yes.
Can I add that to your punch list, Diane? He's got 900 left in the account. Is the 31 realistic for the rest of the year, or is there anything there? Just seems a little bit
Askew.
higher than I expected. If it mathematically works out, then we're fine. It just bears
Was
a
that
second
with
look.
the new phone change? That must be affecting that, right?
Yeah. we should have the new bills by now to see what that's gonna average out to.
Cool. I mean, I know we're speaking to the listening public, and the fact is, you have a lot of them. One of the larger telephone budgets in that regard, so it
Yep.
bears a second look.
Yep. That was telephone, account, water, provides the fire they metered the fire station, so, we're at a commercial, we do have a commercial due to the amount of water that we go through. Diesel was based on what we had, basically what we had used at our average. I think I used a 3-year average, it was 1,409 gallons, and the year's projection was $1.70 per gallon price. Is what I use there. Gas, same thing, provide for the fire department vehicle based on a 3-year average at 903 gallons, and we're projected at $1.89 per, so. Repair and maintenance of equipment, 5345. Cost, basically to fix everything. Ladder, SCBA required testing, yearly maintenance. Repair to responders, pagers, and two-way communication radios. The pagers, as you'll see as we get down in a few more lines here, we're really looking at not finally, but fire department pagers for some reason are just, they were either technology's changed a lot in the last 5 or 10 years, or Motorola just thinks that they should only make something for 2 years and then all of a sudden stop making it and make you buy the new one. So we have tried to find alternate sources, and we are gonna be shopping around for other type pagers so that it's more economical for us. But a typical fire department pager that lasts 3 years at the most sometimes is like $600. And to me, that's like, and then a year later you try to have it serviced and they're like, yeah, we don't make parts for that anymore. I don't get that, but
So, we actually purchase pagers versus a,
fire department pager actually has the tone that comes across
Yep.
the pager,
Yep.
and then the voice that follows it. Yes.
I was just curious, because Lewiston works with Critical Alert, and they actually rent theirs on a,
And they carry numerical pagers.
right, so yours is strictly alpha? Or
Ours are strictly
numeric.
right, and they're geared towards
Voice.
voice,
Voice.
yeah, page and voice.
They're like radios you can't transmit on.
Right.
So this is
Okay.
real time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Makes sense, I was just trying to get a handle on the line item.
We're at like minute or 6 now, I think, is what they're coming out with. That's a 5, I think. But we haven't bought any 6s, but 5s are, I had like, I don't know, I date myself. I had an old Minotaur 1 when I first started. Ended up with a 3
So you
that
worked the
lasted like
cycle?
10 years. And that was bulletproof until it falls off your belt and goes in the toilet. But these just seem to not, I don't know if it's the technology or what the deal is with it. It's just, so.
I think it's a result of a good business plan.
Correct. Good job, Motorola.
Yes, successful business model.
So account office supplies, that's basically any office supplies for the fire department, including the fire stations. You're gonna see 5380 and 5410. The differences in that is about 8,000. 8,000 got shed from one and 8,000 got added to another one. So 5380 in operating supplies, this line provides operating supplies for the fire department. It includes, our helmets, boots, and gloves for anyone that we need to replace or do that type of stuff. It is the radio and pager batteries for communications. It also shows an increase this year is to establish the Swiftwater rescue equipment that we hope to purchase. We had Swiftwater rescue class. We had an instructor come in. We had a group of guys that actually took that class. We're finding that we can kind of do the best of both worlds we did cold water rescue already. Cold water rescue suits don't work for Swiftwater rescue, but Swiftwater rescue suits work for cold water rescue. So what we're looking at doing is kind of establishing that dual purpose suit with a PFD, with a vest basically, and be able to kind of do both jobs there. So that's what that increase is basically for there. Being able to, we were at, and this is paid off already. I mean, we've already had a Swiftwater rescue with if you saw the local news with the awards that were just handed out by the Red Cross, that was a good look. It's working out well. Supplies parts was a slight increase there. Supply, basically due to pricing, it was to supply and repair parts for the fire department, both in apparatus and equipment, depending on what that might need. The equipment, as far as 5410, that was the decreased line. It helps provide with 2 sets of personal fire protective gear for our firefighters. That program has been established. I think we established that when I became chief. Yeah, well, Chief Brooks actually did. I was deputy chief then. So, every year we have a 5-year rotation. Everybody ends up with new gear if needed, but basically we were outfitting the whole department within a 5-year span. And if PA says you should be done, there should be no gear older than 10 out there. Everybody's got gear right now. We're sitting pretty good in the closet, so we reduced that down to 2 sets. You've seen it up to as many as 8 sets before. So with that, we want to defer that other money basically to replace and upkeep, the radios and the pagers in the amount of $20,000 and really establish that program. We were lucky. We got a federal grant to actually buy radios, portable radios for the trucks, probably 6 years ago, maybe ish. The problem when you buy 35 portable radios is 35 batteries all go, at the same time. So we've been fighting that, trying to piecemeal and fight that program. We're finally going to establish that program. And the officers' radios, actually, the CAD are carrying radios that are almost 10 years old. So we're looking at trying to upgrade those radios. They may be even older than that. So that's why that amount. So, and then the big one, capital reserves, asking for $150,000 in that. And that's to keep the truck replacement program approved by the board in 2004. It's, to bring the account into a manageable amount to sustain upcoming replacement of apparatus. And I'll plant the seed right now that when we start on Engine 7, like we had talked about, our good 3.5-hour informational night, that there's not going to be enough funding in there for Engine 7. So alternate funding is going to have to be sought, and then we're going to have to make a real decision on, and I have a whole workshop night that we can talk about that on the refurbishment plan. Is it going to be a straight refurbishment plan, or are you still going to supplement buying apparatus out of that plan? So. Questions?
I'll entertain questions.
So what is our current account in that reserve account that we're building up there? How much do we have in that?
And I can get that.
We're gonna have to look it
Yeah,
up.
to get that, I'd like to know.
Because we were only looking at, we're working out of the allotment of 50, we still haven't paid for Engine 1's refurb, which will be here any time, so that 53 will be pretty much going to the wayside, but I thought we were right around the 2,
Well, we have to subtract what they've already designated,
right.
which you haven't paid for, so.
Ballpark for Engine 7 next year?
500,000 to 600,000, I say that? I have a deputy that also builds fire trucks, so, sitting right there.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Between $500,000 and $600,000.
So we might have a quarter of it set aside, is what you're telling me?
Right. And that's not on any of you,
No, just,
that's on,
that's,
right, previous.
I wasn't even getting into the politics of it.
Right, and I'm not either. The idea of, yeah,
It is what it is.
the plan, we've always been saying, yeah, the plan, great, but the plan's been underfunded. So
Right,
at some
right.
point, we need to make a decision on the plan, on the funding for the plan, so, and that's gonna be that part of it, so.
So, just so I'm clear on that, by putting this 150 in, when it comes time for us to talk about Engine 7 next year, we would have a quarter of the estimated cost of
full purchase.
Full purchase to replace.
And that would.
'Cause that was my question, I didn't know if we're at half-life or we're at on this particular.
7
year
is
yet.
done.
It's full, okay, good.
It's 20. Yeah, it's a 94.
Okay, so that tells me everything, so it's full.
It's had its half-life refurb.
Right.
And it's gone well beyond what we estimated.
We got it.
at. Right.
Okay. So we're at that point.
So, food for thought on that. Does it need to be part of the budget process or council after the budget process for his workshop on that plan and future needs of equipment within the fire department?
After.
After?
Yeah,
I think it's a long,
We're-
I don't think it's
we're
related to this,
saying-
cause with this,
Yeah.
absorb this soundbite, you either buy into the 150 grand this year or we don't. Get past the budget and then have that longer range discussion
Right.
with all of it. That's where I was going
And
with it
there,
too.
we have a few options. I kind of planted the seed when we had talked about that. You know, engine two's coming up just after that. After that, we're
Right.
sitting pretty good. It's just what direction do we want to go for the 2, for the 1? It's, you know,
When does engine 2?
3
engine
years.
2 is like 4 years out,
Yeah.
5 years out, but if you're looking at operation and everything else, if we
He
could
must
get
have been at a darker corner that night. He
Well,
said
if-
3.
more for it, because it's
I like his
not-
5 tonight.
If we get, so I'm just trying to, visualize. If we get to a point where we address 7, then we still have a little bit of breathing room realistically to try to get some money into a capital improvement plan. So by the time that we have to talk to, we may be in a little bit better spot.
You would be, yes. You still wouldn't be, at that point, you'd be at the spot where if you want to fully finance out of the program, you're not leaving yourself any.
It would be
for
back to
re-
the, yeah, be right,
you'd
we're
be
looking at a
back.
donut hole again.
Right.
So we're basically, but you're saying, I'm just trying to understand, if we got to that point where we could fund from the, and we do it,
Yep.
there's no pending, half-life refurb or anything along that line for a while now?
Right.
Okay,
Then we're looking at engine 1 and truck 6 later on. Squad 3 and Rescue 10 are there, but both of those are the
we
forecast.
would have time to
life on
replenish
those.
the fund?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
And I'll float the lead balloon going back to his dialogue in January that he mentioned fire stations on both sides of town.
Infrastructure.
Yes.
You're saying savings would fund the truck?
No. I'm hopeful this time that we actually have a fire station that's engineered for the size truck we buy. That
Well,
was-
and the idea that
Yeah,
if we build fire stations, they're gonna have to be up to snuff on the fact that when all of us are gone and there's a career department here, if Lisbon grows, they have to be built for that. There has to be sleeping quarters in them, there has to be, there's typically kitchen facility and everything else, but, the idea that it would be lost, if we built fire stations, basically the same thing that we have right now with no sleeping facility or anything like that, you're doing an injustice to the town, so that wouldn't be, you'd have to come and build them
Okay.
to a standard at least.
I had 3 accounts that had a sizable amount left in them. The repairs and maintenance equipment, supplies operating, and equipment for this year. Is there anything on the horizon that's coming before June that I'm missing?
Typically, springtime is hose testing time, and we start really getting into buying our allotment of hose testing and everything else. So, that line, as far as the supplies, operating supplies, typically once winter's done, we start
Okay.
picking up more.
Okay, so it is a springtime operation.
Yeah. Repair and maintenance on equipment if you actually went back and looked and run a further timeline on that one, you'd see that
It's smoked based on when it was run?
usually, right, we've done very well, and then maybe that what has helped us that this year is that Truck 6 and Engine 1 are doing their refurbs, so a lot of that money that we would typically end up fixing something on Truck 6 and Engine 1 would eat up a lot of that. Not to say, and let's just hope that it doesn't, we don't have to spend all of that right off the bat here.
Okay. I guess like, where it's kinda going with it is hoping that in the, supplies are operating, you might be able to find the funds to be able to buy the swift water rescue equipment this year versus paying for it next year.
Yeah.
If that were a possibility, if we knew what that was.
I have those numbers. I mean, that's doable, but we also have, when the officers doing their collateral duties request equipment, I get that list and we pretty much have that earmarked already for what we were actually doing.
Okay, so you know.
I'd have to go back and make
These
sure.
funds are gonna be used, is what you're telling me.
Right.
Okay, I'll retract that, because it's not like it's something that we can actually defer or avoid from doing this year.
You know, there's some other areas that I need to make up some for that, you know, for the wages, so.
And that was the other thing that was in the back of my mind, because you have to come out within the budget overall, regardless of which line item is over or under, right?
Right.
20 grand for equipment, that's your pagers? Is that what you've, pagers and radios specifically?
The 20 grand is what we were trying to establish. If we're buying 10 pagers, 10 new portables for the officers,
Yep.
they're about $1,000 a piece. So there's 10 of that, and then the other 10 would go towards pagers and battery replacement for the established that we
Okay.
have already.
And those are necessary in this year? This coming budget cycle?
This upcoming budget cycle,
Yeah,
it's
nothing that can be deferred to a future year. is what you're
they can be reduced in the amount that we would get. You know, I wouldn't wanna nix the whole
Right.
project, but, if we reduced it and didn't get as many, then, yeah.
I was trying to go with the fact that 10 this year, 10 following year, or something like that to phase in to avoid the batteries, but does 1 year actually impact that materially at all? They're gonna fail within the same,
They're failing already. You take a radio off truck 6, we're gonna get 20 minutes out of it. We've tried everything, and what it was the quality of the battery that we were discussed, that we bought. Now we're finding out that it shouldn't have been, we should have bought the higher quality battery so that they sit there, they're on trickle chargers. So the trucks are plugged in and everything else, but you gotta remember, they could sit for weeks at a time sometimes.
Right.
Our per diems are supposed to be, and they take them off the truck, turn them on, kill them for the day, they need
just
to
for
be
that,
cycled.
exactly.
They need to be cycled, and they're doing that. But it's communication, the utmost importance, right? in this,
No, it's,
So.
Better quality, let me guess, the better quality batteries are no longer available.
No, they are available, it's just that the price of what they, right?
It's more than buying a new radio with better,
Well, no, that was like last year's, we tried to do pagers last year, we got a different type of pager, or a radio pager that was like, yeah, that's gonna work great, until you go to buy batteries for them, it costs more than what the radio was,
yeah, okay.
so.
It's a racket, I'm in the wrong business.
Fire equipment itself has, technology-wise, in the last 10 years, has taken off, so that's why the air packs got changed, 3 years ago, because we were gonna hit a technology snafu come the year after, so we went after new air packs, because it was just gonna cost us a considerable amount more when it came time to buy the newer product,
any other questions of Chief on this budget?
Are we all on board on the 150?
That was my next question.
Sorry.
No, but any heartburn on going from 75 to 150 with, the equipment repair account? Equipment
refurbishment.
refurbishment account, I should say.
I have a suggestion, and it may not just apply to this department, and I don't know that you can do it this year, but your repair and maintenance of equipment account, if you have a good year where you have a considerable amount left over, I would suggest that you make a recommendation to transfer that into the capital reserve project account at year end, whatever the balance is, because that's just gonna help build that up. Because, if you're not spending it, It is for equipment, so you might as well put it into the reserve.
Supplementing. every little-
I don't think it's a bad idea. I think it's there for what it's intended for, and like you said, if we have a good year where we don't have a lot of repair or maintenance costs, then rather
gonna add up
rather
over
than leave
time.
it there, pushing it into. For now, I think that we're still at that point too. We have to have that workshop to really flesh out what next steps are going to look like.
That's a more focused, you'll have a lot more focused information on what needs to be done and when.
I mean, short term, it makes sense, Diane. I'm in favor of it. And then maybe when we get to that point, we're talking about some different things from a long-term perspective. But we're making decisions about this year's budget, so I could get on board with that pretty easy. As far as the 150,
I have no
It's-
issue,
it's
I have no
only-
issue. You can
it's
pay for it now,
75
you can pay for it over.
well, that's what I mean. And I don't think it's gonna hurt, I don't think it's gonna hurt us to roll into it, but I think also knowing what we know, that we're gonna be draining this thing out again sooner rather than later. I'm a yes for now.
If anybody's weighing in on the side, we can put it on the list and deal with the 75 at a later date too.
Yeah, I think we should definitely keep it on the list to look at it again later, just to be sure, depending on where we are. 'Cause right now, we've got a lot of progress we need to make to get that total down.
I mean, that is one of the pieces that's actually increasing for a specific purpose, and we did the same thing last year. When Ryan was sitting in the chair last year, we beat him up and gave him a shopping list of, you're buying this, this, and this, and this before June 30th, because we're not paying for it next year. That was the same question to you tonight in that regard. But,
So it's really just the 75,000,
yeah,
the additional 75, because we
Yep.
normally do 75, it's not the whole 150.
no, exactly. I'm not hearing anybody saying that they're not willing to last year we had unanimous decision on the 75. Is anybody inclined in doing less than what we did last year? Yeah, just the 75. I mean, knowing fully well, last piece of fire apparatus, we bonded it over how long, sir? You told me earlier.
That was the ladder before this ladder. The Pierces were 10 years.
10 years.
The 1.3 that we just spent 10 years
Yep.
was, yeah. So that was, ladder 8 originally was 20. And we got rid of it at 18 years.
Yeah,
We had 2 more payments.
which is what sparked why we're having a funding account now, so
Right.
the next engine 7, when that's replacement, we may be looking at a short-term bond as one of your options, but that's a discussion for next
Or
workshop.
we'll be in way better shape than we were for 20 year. Oh, no,
Oh, yeah, so, yeah, definitely.
I think the intentions were there and the economy tanked and political issues
that's
came into
exact-
play
yeah.
and it went to hell quick.
Everybody was getting what they wanted, up to 2008.
Right,
So
we
it
lost
was-
$1 million a year in
Right.
state funding from revenue sharing, and
Right.
it
I mean-
killed every budget.
And Lisbon is by no stretch alone in that. Everybody's still feeling it. I mean, governor's budget this year, the excise tax, not the excise, homestead exemption alone scares me if that goes through. Never mind all the other ins and outs of it. It's just, it's whose basket of goods are you looking to balance? State demonizing the communities demonizing the state. It's just one big push. Any other questions of Chief, though?
No, sir. Thank you.
Thank
you,
you.
sir. Moving right along.
I see Lisa in the
EMA
au-
director.
Yeah, I see
Yeah, I
Lisa in the
know.
audience.
Sorry, Lisa.
This is the best for last because it will be really quick.
You're my favorite.
I'm sure I'm not the only person who has to get up at 5, so. The only 2 items that are really items that we need to go over are the first 2, the wages and dues. The remaining items are FICA and workers' comp and unemployment insurance. After some discussion with Diane, we put the wages at $15.31 as a stipend,
And I annually pay dues to the Maine Association of Local Emergency Managers. I sort of thought about not joining that organization. Again, I looked into whether it was worth the $35. It might be $25 too, and if that's the case, then, you know, the 35, I think it might be going up this year, so just did that. But the first year I was a member I actually won the membership, so I took the year's membership. I used a little bit. It was okay. Over the past year, I have used it quite a bit in terms of using their website and newsletter, and making use of the contacts at Malem. So I think it's not a huge membership fee, and it's well worth investing. So, and I hope the wages are worth investing for you guys. It's, you know, I don't really keep an hourly track of my time, but in general, I know that I have made sure that I meet with the county director at least once a month, if not twice a month. Right now, we're working on the hazard mitigation plan for the county. The hours that go into that, and then the additional trainings that I do, the online trainings and the seminars, and I'll be going to a 2-day conference. That's a no-cost conference in Augusta this spring. So I think I think it's worth it. So I'm hoping that the board will go ahead and approve the line items. But if you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I do. Anything other than, we have before us the generator pad and infrastructure as an item, funding it out of fund balance. She's given us a $20,000 estimate. Anything, if we were to open that up to you for what we're looking to accomplish for the project at the high school, that is your moment.
Well, it's important to remember that grant that we received, the first thing is that it's the first of 3 years of grants that I'm hoping to continue to receive. And I've already started working on writing for the second year of grant. I have 3 years to use a grant. So I've received one, I have 3 years to use it. I'll use all of it at once at the end for the generator. That grant can only be for physical equipment. It can't be for what's considered bricks and mortar. So it can't be used for labor. It can't be used for running wire or anything else. It can't be used for building, for doing any construction work that's required in order to accommodate a generator of that size. So it's extremely wise to budget in advance for that, because we'll have a short period of time at that point to go ahead and get that done. So looking at it in terms of advanced planning, we really should put that in so that when it comes time to purchase that generator, get everything up and running. We already have some pieces in place in terms of electrical equipment being in place. Not equipment, but
Infrastructure?
the space for it. We already have something, we're ready for it on that end. What we aren't ready for at that end is where to put the generator. And some people think you can put it on the roof or somewhere else. It's important to remember that this generator is the size of a camper. So, and it weighs a lot. So you can't just put it on the roof or hide it somewhere. We also are restricted in where we can put it by EPA restrictions. So we have to make sure that, and that's part of my this year's advanced planning also includes making sure that I start that process, because I can't, it's the name of the form that I have to do, which is really like a book. I have to do all the EPA investigating ahead of time and make sure that we're not going to plan all this and then not have a place to put it. So, where the high school is situated is very close to water, it's very close to wildlife, it's next to the woods. And so we have to show that it's not, that putting a generator there is not gonna cause any problems. So, that's why the concrete pad, that's the least impact, most of the time. So, putting that in the budget, if we end up doing something different, you know, calling it putting a concrete pad in place, if it turns out that we have to do a different kind of installation, we'll still have the budgeting set aside for that. None of it is going to be inexpensive, but it's gonna cost us a lot less if we don't have to scramble to do it. And so I think it's extremely wise to plan ahead for that. And I think that number is reasonable. When I did my first research into getting the generator, it looked to me like 20 to 30,000 was a good number. And going with local folks and making sure that I talked to people who would do the work in this area, I came to the conclusion that 20 was a closer bet to the number than 30. So I think we could do it for the lower number. So, I mean, we don't know, we never know until we actually get to that point, but I think it's a good budget number.
So, from just that discussion purposes then, funding that out of fund balance, all we need to do is actually redesignate from undesignated to a line account to hold it for when it's necessary 3 years ago? Would it go into the same account if she's already got her grant, or is it
No,
separate?
it'll go in a separate account, we'll put it in an interest-bearing account. She doesn't have the money, I mean, it's gonna be a reimbursement. It's a reimbursement.
Drawdown.
Right.
Okay.
When you're looking for the one-time ones, right?
So, is anybody ill opposed with that discussion of actually putting aside the 20 grand? What I think it does, it eliminates who pays for it, because it sits on the school grounds versus the town, if you will, and what we're looking for is an emergency shelter that's not really a school function, it's a town function, kinda like designating this place in MTM as a warming station. It's a municipal function, not a school function, if you will. Anybody opposed to this idea of actually setting the 20 grand aside from fund balance?
I think the storm we had during the winter where half the town lost power shows us why we need something like this as an emergency backup. Get a hurricane or something and the whole town's out of power, you're gonna need some kind of a generator somewhere for people that are, out of the power situation.
I think the bond, $5 million for a gym, and then not set aside 20 grand for a generator, it's a no-brainer.
Yes.
Make that motion then. Let's do it.
Yeah,
I agree with that. Read your report for not being able to make the night we had the workshop. Anything you might want to recap that on your list looking forward for priorities other than the generator project that you're working on? Anything on your list that we should be aware of?
I'll be honest, my goal is, for the town of Lisbon is to increase preparedness, and that includes, there's an education factor, there are physical factors, and there's a lot involved. I would like to, over time, develop an annual education piece, and to develop a budget that will include, we would like to buy 20 more cots to put in the shelter, because our new shelter with a generator is going to be wonderful, but everyone's going to be sleeping on the floor in sleeping bags. But it's
That
one
you
step
bring.
at a time.
That you bring.
That's right, that you bring. So it's one thing at a time, but I think, developing new projects one at a time, it's, I put as much time as I can into each individual project per year, but I think, adding different aspects to it as we move forward is important, to have the, third largest municipality in the county not have an EMA budget other than to cover the most basic costs. Doesn't sound logical to me, but I also live in town and I don't want to overburden our budget. So I would like to do more work in terms of looking into what those costs would be. Education costs a little bit, not a lot. I work with volunteers a lot, and I understand the value of them, and I'm not opposed to developing over time a volunteer base that would be valuable to all of the emergency responders in case of emergency or disaster. And, I'm a firm believer in preparing for the worst and hoping for the best. So if we continue to, little by little, build up our stores, as it were, of emergency experience, emergency education, and emergency preparedness materials, and being ready, then we'll be ahead of the game. It's not an overnight process, and I understand that, and I'm just, we have a big project. The generator project is a really big project, but I don't want to let smaller projects go by, so I'm trying to work on them, concurrently.
One of the things that the council set for goals for us for the coming year was disaster recovery plan, revisiting that. I know 3 of us that sat through the training with EMA with Joanne last May was an eye-opener for what the expectation level is, and my question becomes, when's the last time that plan was actually looked at, and is it still relevant?
It was looked at last year.
Okay.
Briefly, and it's a very basic plan, and it fulfills the technical requirements for a plan. Part of my duties is to sit down with the county director annually and look over the plan. Because it's such a large plan, it's not really possible to rewrite the whole plan in one year, but each year, in my discussions with the director, each year we can look at an aspect of the plan, prioritize which aspects we need to focus on in our town for us, and redevelop a different aspect of it each year. And, look at the whole every year, but focus on a specific aspect each year. So that will be after the springtime trainings, and after I finish that grant writing process again.
Okay.
So,
If it's something that would afford workshop time to be able to set something up, to be able to have that discussion and get
Great.
people involved, we're receptive to it, because we have a great resource in you. We want to be able to see it succeed to move forward.
yeah, one of the reasons I haven't really done a lot just yet, coming through into being in my second year of doing this, is because this year, right now, we're in the throes of working on the county hazard mitigation plan. And I've actually relied a lot on Ryan Layton. He's been extremely helpful with that, and he's met with other town staff to make sure that the mitigation part of our town plan is strongly, it's almost always is nearly entirely public works oriented. So it's, things like, what if, we can't just say, what are we gonna do if a dam breaks? We need to say, over time, if we continue ditching these roads, what's the long-term benefit going to be? So working on those plans, and that's sort of hand in hand with our own town plan, so. I've been trying to build on each project and each plan that we're working on to move into the next one and make them all stronger, so hopefully
Okay.
that's working.
Perfect. Any other questions?
I have them, I'm gonna save it for offline, I'll grab you up after.
Okay,
All right, good.
Thank you.
great, Thank you. And just a plug for the Maine Prepares Conference at, during April. I think it's the second week in April, I'll have to check my calendar. But it's a 2-day conference of emergency managers and emergency responders from all over the state of Maine. It's held in Augusta for 2 days, on a Tuesday and Wednesday. And it's free, and all you have to do is sign up in advance, because they need to know who's going to be there. But they hold what we call breakout sessions, short informational seminars. They're about an hour long each, in a broad range of subject areas, everything from communications and response to, things that are in the public eye a lot, like shootings, and things that aren't always in the public eye, like communications and new radio programs. So the full range of emergency management. And it's actually really interesting. So, actually really interesting. So, I urge anyone who's interested to go, because it's a really interesting learning experience, and also the food is great.
Thank you.
That's why I go for the food. All right, thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Good, done, adjourned?
No.
No, it's a workshop, thankfully. Run for your life.
Drive fast, take chances.
That's right.
You guys like me busy.
So Lisa, my quick question, I heard you say grant writing, so, yeah, that's part of what you do is actively writing grants to try to get